I've never used the Q&A part of this, so if you want to try using it, then you can. And if you don't want to try and do it, I don't know what I just did. And if you'd rather ask questions on Twitter, that's going to be kind of where I'm focusing most of this. But you know, I'm going to manage this the best I can. That's all I can say. It's a one-man operation, so let's kind of get going here. I've got a lot of tweets coming in, so I'm just going to start with a couple of questions here. Let's see. So from Nivi Shaham, I hope I pronounced that right. Can you explain the big things we need to know about the Cold War and any tips you have to remembering time periods? All right, so, well, with time periods, the periodization thing is going to be really kind of tough, because what you're asked to do is you're asked to kind of be able to put all the things into these historical boxes. If you've been watching my videos, you've seen that I talk a lot about historical boxes and being able to kind of frame questions and frame your understanding in terms of what historical box they fit into. The easiest thing to do is to kind of try and put them into movements or ages or eras, or however you want to look at it. So the age of exploration, you know, if you see Magellan, like, that's the age of exploration. If you see Luther, that's the Reformation. If you see Bismarck, then you're thinking about unification and the age of realism. Historical periods are really kind of a tough thing to go along with. I'm trying to get back to your actual question so I can see it, because I lost it all with all of these. My goodness. Where were you? Where were you? Where were you? Oh, that's an hour ago. I'm way past that. Let's see, you were right in here. There we go. Big things to know about the Cold War. Okay, so the Cold War is really this struggle between the East and the West. And when you have the Soviets, who are kind of in this war against this Cold War against the United States and Western Europe. And that's going to kind of like define the whole thing. The specifics of the Cold War that you need to know are not, there aren't all that many of them. You kind of need to understand the big picture. In fact, it seems that they don't even use the term Cold War. Let's see. Might as well check this out while I'm at it. While I'm saying this, if you look on my website as you're going through and looking at some of the questions here, you'll find that why is this looking so weird? You'll find that the curriculum outline is on my website, and I've got, you know, sort of like everything that you need to know there. This is showing up awfully strangely, so let me just try and reload it. Okay. Search for yeah, this is awfully, this is not working so well. Okay, so for right now, I'll say that, you know, with the Cold War, you got to understand the big picture of what's going on. You have to understand that both sides fought proxy wars. In other words, these are wars where, like, they realize they're not going to fight against one another, okay? There's this idea of mutually assured destruction, which ironically goes down with the acronym MAD, which says that, you know, both sides have nuclear weapons that are capable of destroying the Earth. And so you don't want to get into a war like that. And so they end up fighting, but it's more of like this fight for like the hearts and minds. And there are some hotspots of the Cold War. You know, there's the putting up the Berlin Wall. There's the Berlin blockade, followed by America's airlift campaign to get supplies to West Berlin. There's a whole lot of hotspots going on, you know, as you do that. The thing to understand is that these hotspots kind of, they exacerbate the situation. They kind of make it worse and worse and worse. But they never escalate into a full-scale Cold War. The closest we come is during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when, like, literally we were, like, a lot of us wouldn't have existed right now if that happened. So I would understand, like, the big idea about the Cold War, and the sides, the formation of NATO and the Warsaw Pact, the coming together economically of Western Europe in the EEC, and the coming together of Eastern Europe in the Comecon, which has nothing to do with, you know, superheroes, and you know, sort of understand the basic, like, chronology and idea, and the fall of the Soviet Union. Nivi follows up with absolutism. So absolutism is this period of time in which European monarchs go and really, like, claim absolute power. If you've heard of divine right theory of government, that's what absolutism is all about. And it's the idea that a monarch doesn't have to answer to the people. It's kind of like absolutely the opposite of what we believe and fight for here in the United States. And they answered to themselves. They built huge armies, spent lots of money on their courts and their parties and all of that stuff. All of it is, like, I mean, you look at the life of Louis XIV. If you've ever seen pictures of or been to Versailles, then you see, I mean, that's absolutism. And the idea is that the monarch has nothing to do with the people themselves. I don't know why I'm wearing these. Let me take these off. I'm hoping you guys can still hear me, but I realize there's no sound coming in, so there's no reason for me to wear those things. So that's basically what it is. You have this period in places like England and the Netherlands, where they don't go along with the whole idea of absolutism, and they establish a republic in the Netherlands, and they establish a constitutional monarchy over a long period of time in Great Britain, so that Parliament ultimately gets, like, the upper hand on the whole thing. Let's see. Thank you for retweets from all of these people, all of you who are out there. I can't even name you all. Because this is, you know, this is amazing. And I'll tell you, I mean, I've seen my buddy Tom Ritchie go through and do this, and I don't know how he keeps up with all of these things coming in, but we'll do it. 350 people, you know, people are going to ask a lot of questions. I'll take a couple more from Twitter, and then I'll jump over to the Q&A on the Google Hangout. So Colin Nascimento, Dolphin Colin, I've seen your name a lot. Thank you for all your support. Hey, Paul, would you mind explaining some of the philosophical movements of the late 20th century? Oh, you're the AP Euro memes guy. Okay, well, hey, thanks for the memes that I've seen. It's interesting. Philosophical movements of the late 20th century. I think really the big one that you need to know is kind of existentialism. It's the idea, it was the idea that, you know, like, God is dead, that humanity has killed God, that there is no afterlife, there is no one that you're ever going to end up being accountable to. So you live your life, and you live it without remorse. One of the great existentialist novelists is a guy named Albert Camus, who is a French writer, and, you know, writes about people who just have, like, they're emotionless. They have no emotion whatsoever, as a result of sort of, you know, being, you know, because life is just on this earth. It's kind of a depressing way to look at life, to be honest with you. It really is. So So yeah, kind of depressing there, but that's basically the big one that's out there. This thing keeps jumping on me. Okay, let's see. Ann Lippert, nice to see you here. Thanks for this. Could you cover the Cold War, specifically Soviet leaders? When I'm thinking about Soviet leaders, I'm thinking that you probably need to know Lenin and Stalin, um, although Lenin's not really Cold War, but Stalin definitely. Khrushchev, who is in power and tries to sort of pull back a lot of the Stalin stuff. He goes through this period of de-Stalinization. And then you could probably jump forward to Gorbachev, and his idea of glasnost, and perestroika, of opening up Russia so it listens to the people more, which in Russian history doesn't always work out so well, because they tend to do this is periodically. You open it up like, hey, Catherine the Great did this. Let's open it up so that people have more freedom of speech. They can enjoy some of these freedoms, and then lo and behold, people do, and they say things that the monarch, the czar, the premier, whatever, that they don't like. So they start shutting down on it. And I don't know if there'll be anything beyond Gorbachev, to be honest with you. Yeltsin might show up as a reformer. I don't think Putin's going to make the cut on this one here. So let's see. I'm going to jump over to the list here. Are you going to go in chronological order through this session? I could, but to be honest with you, I would completely lose all track of this. And let's face it, most people who study start at the beginning. So if I started with the Renaissance, we would never get to the end, and you'd be really reliving all the stuff that you were used to reliving anyway. So it's just like, yeah, it's no, we're not going to go in order here. So that'll be better. Emily Graham has asked, you said you trust your to trust your common sense, but sometimes my common sense leads me to the wrong answer. Any suggestions? There really isn't a suggestion for that. I think when you look at it, like I always tell my students, you eliminate the answers that are absolutely wrong. And then when you're left with the ones that you're really questioning about, then you start asking yourself, like, which one really makes sense? Which one really, really fits with what you're looking at? And that generally will lead you to the answer that you need, that you're looking for. It doesn't always. It's not a perfect system. There can't be. But it's a good rule of thumb. And I tell them, I say, don't go back and second guess yourself, because it's so easy to talk yourself out of the correct answer. In fact, I showed them a clip from The Princess Bride, in which you have the if you've seen the movie, the hero of the movie, his name escapes me right now, but he sits down and he's being confronted with by sort of the smart guy. And he challenges him to a duel of wits, and he puts poison in wine, puts down 2 glasses, and then the smart guy of the group he's fighting, tries to outwit him, and in the process of all this, he completely just talks himself out of every single answer, and you don't want to get caught into that. So at some point, you kind of just have to say, that's it. Like, I got to make a decision, and I have to move on, and I have to kind of go with it. So let me be done with that one, and I'm going to jump back on to Twitter here and try. This thing keeps jumping out on me. Let's see. Oh, so much. You guys are jumping here. Let's see. Okay, and distance between the first industrial revolution and the second industrial revolution. Thank you, Jessica and Chloe, for asking that question. Okay, so the first industrial revolution is the early one. It's the one that starts in Britain. The characterization of it happens to be like, this is the age of steel. It's railroads, It's I mean, sorry, not steel, steam, railroads, iron, sort of the early things. And it's going to be confined to really, let's just say the beginning of the 19th century. The second industrial revolution comes along at the end of the 19th century, and that has to do with other new inventions. Steel instead of iron, stronger, more flexible. Um, Electricity instead of steam totally changes this. I mean, I couldn't be running this whole thing on steam power. Um, and and automobiles, petroleum and chemicals and stuff like that are going to be the big things. And so that's really the big difference. Productive capabilities of the second industrial revolution far outweigh the first industrial revolution, but you couldn't have one without the other. So you just kind of keep going. Kanwar Preet Gill, thank you. God with us. Yeah, let's hope so. Although, ironically, I have a pin from the Nazi regime. They used to wear them on the lapels of their jackets. It said God with us, and it has this big swastika. So, everyone thinks God's with them. That's the ironic thing. Bethany, could you go over the Paris Commune, and do you think it's important for the exam? I honestly don't think the Paris Commune is even in the concept outline. I'm going to try this again just to make sure, because this was working for me so well the other night. But I have the concept outline here, and it just for some reason is not looking all that great. But let's search for the Paris Commune and see if there is anything that you need to know about this at all. No, not at all. But just to make sure that I have this all together, let me get this kind of fixed up here. And because I can't search it on this. One moment, please. Bear with me as I do this. I'll go ahead and answer another question as I go through, and my phone keeps jumping on me here, so I can't keep up with anybody. A lot of these questions I'm going to have to give really brief. I like to go off on long stories. You guys who've seen my videos know that. But I don't think we're going to have time for that tonight. So there's just too many questions here. I'm sure a lot of them are going to be, sort of duplicates. But there's going to be a there's going to be some duplicates and stuff like that. Course description. Sorry. Boom. And then, oh, maybe it was iBooks that I did it in that worked so well. I can search here. Ah, yes. Now this might work better. What was I was looking for? Paris Commune, yeah. And it's searching. Nope, the Paris Commune is not going to be on the exam, so don't worry about it. Let's see. Everyone's ready for the AP exam. Yes, Irish Home Rule. This was really a deal with the British for a long time. They realized they had to do something about Ireland because they didn't want a revolution over there in the late 19th century, the early 20th century. And so they tried to get this whole idea of home rule going. The idea would be like they weren't going to be independent, but they would have their own parliament and they would be able to make decisions about their own country to an extent, and really was shot down for a long time, which is, of course, why they ended up having their own revolution and why they ended up becoming their own country. So it's sort of this attempt to try and do the British thing, which is like give a little and avoid a revolution. But when it came to the Irish, they didn't do it, and there was really still a lot of bad blood there for a long time. Haley says, what were some of the most popular art trends in the Renaissance period and other art trends after that? Well, the most popular art trend in the Renaissance period was Renaissance art, really. It's this rediscovery of the human form. It's a scientific study of how people, how the body is proportioned. It really focuses on trying to depict reality with perspective and things like that. And big other art trends after that. There's a whole list of them. We could go on for a very long time about art. But yeah, that's the big thing. If you're looking at Renaissance, you'll notice. I mean, you got your Michelangelos, your Raphaels, you've got Da Vinci and stuff like that. These are the big artists. In fact, I have a video on Renaissance art. I have a few art videos on my Bit by Bit series. If you haven't seen my Bit by Bit series, please check it out. It's on my YouTube page, and I cover a great deal of stuff on that, which might really help, going through. I've actually had people tell me they were binge watching, which is kind of an odd feeling that people are binge watching my stuff. So let's see, I keep losing my place here. Let's see. All right, here we are. A couple more from Twitter, and then we'll move over here. Could you go over the revolutions of 1848 and or the unification of Germany and Italy that came afterwards? Okay, well, Arvind, the revolutions of 1848, they're driven by the idea of Romanticism. Those isms which are unleashed by the French Revolution really come to a head. They're preceded by the revolutions of 1830. And those are unsuccessful for the most part. France gets a little bit, but everybody else kind of gets nothing. The revolutions of 1848 are pretty much just as futile. They start in France. They're able to get a new leader whose name's Louis Napoleon, but very soon declare himself, emperor. And everyone else kind of doesn't get their thing. Unification of Germany and Italy. I'll just show you Germany and Italy unify in, around 1870. There's periods leading up to it. Those are long stories. The big idea is that the leaders, Cavour in Italy and Bismarck in Germany, are able to use the idea of realpolitik, which is kind of a modernized version of Machiavelli's ideas and kind of a modernized version of the politics of like Elizabeth and Henry IV, and in order to unify their country. They strategically make moves which are going to kind of try and unify, and they're successful. And they become then big powers. Germany far more than Italy, there's no doubt. And then one more here. Can you explain the Glorious Revolution, Ezra? The Glorious Revolution is like the end of the English Civil War period. Well, I mean, the English Civil War is long over, but you could call it all one period. Anyway, in the Glorious Revolution, it's called glorious because it's fairly bloodless. The idea is that Parliament has a monarch on the throne in the person of James II, who is, having Catholic tendencies, and they really don't want him around because they really don't want to be Catholic. And so they reach out to his sister Mary, who is married to William, and they invite them to take the throne, with the sole exception, or the sole qualifier, that they have to ratify an English Bill of Rights, which puts limits on the monarchy and gives people rights that cannot be taken away. And they're willing to do that. And so with that in hand, They invade England. They are supported by Parliament. It is almost instantaneous. James II gets completely tossed off the throne, spends the rest of his life trying to raise an army to take England back or Britain back. It just doesn't happen. So that's sort of why it's glorious and why all of this comes out. And yeah, that's kind of where we are. I'm going to move through a little bit quickly to try and get caught up here with this. I just got a question about civic humanism. I have a great video on civic humanism, so watch that one. That's from one of my students. You guys got to watch my videos. Seriously, I get a lot of people that watch these, but you guys kind of slack on that. But yeah, civic humanism is simply the idea during the Renaissance that people can use their learning to improve their society and to improve their to beautify their city and to sort of give back. It's that kind of thing. From Bon Bao, do you have any recommendations for staying calm before and during the test? Could you also give a shout out to Miss 10 Ake? Hey. Yes. This is a hard thing to do because you're going to get kind of nervous as you're doing this. I would say confidence. If in your mind you're confident, you're going to remain calm. You're going to see questions which are going to be difficult and you're not going to know them. You got to get the point that you're not going to get 100% on this exam. And no one expects you to get 100%. And it's not graded that way. So like if you see questions that you don't know, don't start freaking out and telling yourself that you don't know anything. You give it your best shot and you move on because there's going to be plenty of questions that you do know, and there's going to be plenty of opportunities for you to show off your knowledge. Okay, so just take a deep breath, eliminate answers if this is multiple choice that you know are wrong, and then move on through that. Good question there. Let's see. Jamie Bennett asked, "Am I doing this right?" Yeah, you totally got this. You got the thing here. Eli Silva, please do a run through of the whole year, especially the 16th to 18th centuries. Hey, thanks for that question. Seriously, that could take me 4 hours to do, and I would not do a good job of it. My advice, if you're looking for something that that specific or that general, I mean, go through and Google, AP Euro review notes or something, and you'll find lots of documents out there where they'll give you like the boom, 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 boom. But I can't run through the whole year. I mean, come on, Eli, you're asking too much here. Bob, can you explain the difference between the Northern Renaissance and the Italian Renaissance? I'll give you that real quickly. The Italian Renaissance is a revival of learning, and it focuses on the writings and the ideas of ancient Greece and Rome, those classical civilizations that are out there. The Northern Renaissance is a similar move. It's a revival in learning and all of that, but it is a revival of learning that focuses on the writings. It focuses on the Bible, and it focuses on the writings of the early Christian fathers, those early scholars of Christianity. And it tries to, it really questions some of the things the church is doing in a different way. The Italian Renaissance kind of goes along with the church a little bit more. It doesn't really come out against the church, not completely, but certainly Northern Renaissance definitely is a little bit more critical of all of that. That's the big difference. One more here, then I'll jump to the Q&A section. Ben Schultz, can you talk about the similarities and differences between Enlightenment thinkers, Italian unification, absolutism? Thanks for everything. Enlightenment thinkers, I will take on this one. There are really only a few Enlightenment thinkers that you need to know. And just to refresh my memory, I'm going to hit the old Enlightenment, because there's only a few here. Let's see, period two, Enlightenment ideas. That's in the French Revolution. So we don't want that one. Um, let's see. Challenge during the Enlightenment. Here we go. All right. So the College Board really wants you to know about Rousseau, Voltaire, and Diderot. I think that, yeah, Rousseau. Okay. So here's what they want. They want you to understand Voltaire and Diderot. Those are people who are who are kind of fighting against the establishment. Now, Voltaire is this extremely critical person. He criticizes everything about European society, but his big thing, and the one thing you really got to understand about Voltaire, is that he attacks the idea of religious intolerance. He sees around him a Europe which is doing non-Christian things, like burning people at the stake and, you know, an inquisition and those sorts of things, which don't seem all that Christian when you read the Bible. And so he's very, very critical of that. He pushes for liberal reforms, education, things like that. But big, like, no, with Voltaire, religious tolerance is his big thing. Diderot is sort of, he's the encyclopedia guy. He publishes the encyclopedia, and he has all of these great Enlightenment thinkers going through and contributing to it. And it becomes this massive work of Enlightenment thought, which is actually banned in France because, you know, Enlightenment thought goes against the idea of an absolute monarch, which, you know, like, that's France for a long time. So those guys are big. Politically, Locke and Rousseau. John Locke talks about natural rights of life, liberty, and property. He talks about the social contract between people and the government, and controversially, the right of people to overthrow the government if the government doesn't do what they're looking for it to do. And this is like playing right into the Glorious Revolution. People have the right to overthrow a government and put in place one that works. His ideas are taken up in the Declaration of Independence, if you have ever heard of that thing. Not sure. Rousseau really talks about sort of the idea of society being a little bit corruptive. He's a little bit more into the value of emotion in terms of kind of understanding and analyzing life. He kind of bridges the gap between the Enlightenment and the Romantic period. And then let's see, you know, they're not big fans of women. And yeah, that's kind of, oh, Adam Smith, you have to know about. He talks about the idea of laissez-faire capitalism. And getting away from this idea of mercantilism, in which the government drives all of the policies. He's in favor of capitalism, which allows people to make those decisions. All right, so jumping over to the question and answer list, can you tell us what we need to know about the 30 Years and the 100 Years' War? All right, the 100 Years' War you need to know nothing about, because it ends before the period of this. Well, it ends 3 years after this class starts. So yeah, you don't really need to know anything about that. It's between France and England, and they don't like each other for a very long time, but you don't really need to know anything about that. Joan of Arc, great story. Lots of great stories. Henry V and the big Band of Brothers speech that may or may not have happened. But no. 30 Years' War, the main thing to understand is this. It's the end of the religious wars. In fact, the end of the 30 Years' War is the first turning point. It's the first division the College Board puts between historical time periods. And the reason is because it starts off as a religious conflict between Protestants and Catholics, backed by political motives of, sort of independence from the Habsburg throne. It ends up, after 4 phases of the war, which you really don't need to know 4 phases of the war, but it ends up in a situation where it's not Catholic versus Protestant. It ends up in a situation where a Catholic France backs Protestant Northern German provinces against the rule of Catholic Habsburgs. So in case you didn't get that, that's a Catholic nation backing Protestants in a fight against Catholics. So no longer is it religious. It's now about dynasties. And it starts, this period in European history, which is going to go for a very long time, in which dynasties, like dynastic families, seek to sort of hold on to their rule. So that would be the thing that I would know about this. Let's see. Can you explain why people chose Calvinism over Lutheranism? Well, Calvinism spreads a lot better than Lutheranism. And largely, I think the why is always the tough part. Calvin is a little bit more, this one's going to be tough. Calvin's a little bit more reserved in his writings. Luther can be pretty rough in his writings, and not so. He doesn't like hold back too much. But it was kind of like his way or the highway. But with Calvin, I mean, Calvin kind of was the same thing. His big idea, though, is the idea of predestination, the idea that God is all powerful and can see what's going on. And the idea that people should behave as if they are saved. And that becomes a more palatable move for people than Lutheranism, which is a move away from the church, but is more state-driven. Luther certainly has very different views, but yeah, Calvinism just is more successful. Lutheranism doesn't really spread much out of northern Germany and surrounding areas. Calvinism like goes everywhere. So that's it. What was the main impact of the Enlightenment philosophers? They open up these ideas that challenge the social order, and their ideas are going to flow and be the basis for examples of Enlightenment governments. The best example of the Enlightenment government is, in my opinion, the United States of America. So they set it up, they read all these guys, and then they say, hey, let's try it out. And it's the only place in the world at the time where you can do this. And so they go and they try it out. And lo and behold, it works. And lots of people, especially as the press starts to evolve, they see this and they say, we need to be thinking about this. But then there are reactions against that, saying it's kind of a cold and unthinking, unfeeling, rational approach to things. And you don't always have to be rational. So yeah, there are some monarchs that try out the Enlightenment, but it generally doesn't work too well because they don't like what happens with their people. All right, one more from this list, and I'm jumping back on the Twitter feed here. Let's see. What are the most important exceptions we should know? Jade, I'm not really sure what you're asking here. Exceptions to what? You're going to have to ask a question. I don't know what to do that. The English Revolution and the Glorious Revolution. I think I've gone through the Glorious Revolution, but the English Revolution is a fight between Parliament and the king for power. King Charles I really wants to be an absolute monarch, and he doesn't want to listen to Parliament. He wants Parliament to do what he says. When he asks for money, he wants them to give him money. Parliament wants a guarantee of, limits on his power. And he says no, over and over and over and over. And so they end up fighting a civil war. He gets his head cut off. It ends up with a Puritan despotism, I guess. I mean, you can really say some not so positive things about Cromwell, and in which, the Puritans kind of get rid of everything that's fun, and British people say, why'd we do that? And so they bring back the monarchy. But it ends up, the Glorious Revolution kind of gives an end to that. It's a detailed, long story, and an interesting one. But we just in a review like this, we don't have time. All right, back to the Twitter feed here. Let's see what we got. I'm sorry that I'm running so far behind on these. Please bear with me. What are Freud's ideas, and how did they impact or conflict with the events or thought of the time? Okay, So Freud's basic idea is, well, he's got a couple. Number one, he says that people are driven by irrational forces which are inside of your head, like you can't control them. The whole idea of rationality, no. We do things that are irrational. And a lot of the ideas that he put forth are, no longer in vogue with psychologists. But he put forth the idea of the id, the ego, and the superego, that in our brains there are three parts. The id is like, works off what's called the pleasure principle. Like we always want to do what's being like, well, what's good, what feels good, what makes us happy. The superego is like your socialized part of you, in which society has put things down on you, and you say, this is the way we're supposed to do things, and we've kind of felt these in our lives. I mean, you've felt them, I've felt them. You want to do something, but society doesn't want you to do it. And so the ego is the part of you that kind of plays the mediator of the two. He also kind of believed that everything stems from the idea that well, let's just call it the Oedipus complex and the Electra complex, and you can look it up from there. It has to do with mom and dad. So that's a basic thing. Calls into question a lot of beliefs of what was going over. I just lost the whole thing. We're like 30 minutes. You guys, you poor guys, you asked this stuff like a half an hour ago, and I'm going off on for 10 minutes on all kinds of stuff. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get all the questions. So some of you may have to retweet these if you don't have it. Let's see. Trisha, when you don't know what to do, so you just watch live hangouts because you're freaking out. Oh, come on. Don't freak out. Seriously. It's the worst thing you can do. Calm down. It's going to be okay. You're not supposed to know everything. Let's see. Michael Blau, could you go over conservative authoritarianism? How is different from totalitarianism? Okay, real simple. Authoritarianism has to do with a single ruler, this is not a monarchy. This is some sort of dictatorship. But authoritarian, conservative can mean different things at different times, but generally means that you're not really open to a lot of changes. You're not really open to free speech all that much. But there are limits on what authoritarian rulers can do. Totalitarian rulers control every aspect of society. Outside of jumping into Orwell's 1984, which is like my greatest example of totalitarianism, and without talking about North Korea, if you go into like totalitarian Germany of the 1930s and 1940s, they controlled everything. Every political party was outlawed except for the Nazi Party or the National Socialist Party. The press was censored. Free speech was censored. They controlled everything. They controlled the media. They controlled everything. And any sort of dissent was just dealt with. So that's totalitarianism. They keep track of every part of your life, and they generally have your neighbors and whatnot go in and like rat you out the whole time. Ari, can you talk about the European Union, the European Coal and Steel Community, and the European Economic Community? Okay, they're kind of an evolution. It's an effort after World War II for Western Europe to become linked economically. It starts very conservatively with the European Coal and Steel Community. It evolves into the European Economic Community, which goes beyond those products and brings people into the common market. And then the European Union is sort of like the modern version of that. They've gotten rid of borders effectively. There's free passage within Europe, and they've gone to a common currency. The Maastricht Treaty is the big treaty for the European Union. So if you travel to Europe today, and you don't go to Britain or the UK, and you don't go to Switzerland, pretty much most of the rest of the places, you just use the euro. It's great. It's nice and easy. Not like the old days where you used to have to trade currencies at every border checkpoint. Trust me. Let's see. Enlightenment absolute. Enlightened absolutist. I've already talked about litany. Alexander Kennedy, the Glorious Revolution, the 7 Years' War, the 30 Years' War, and I just lost the entire feed. So let me just. I'm going to jump over here. Let's see. What do we have? Every time you guys post something, everything jumps on me. Let's see. Am I an AP reader? No, I've never actually gone to be an AP reader before. To be honest with you, it coincides with our graduation, and I have a real close relationship with my students, and I just honestly can't bear to be away from them and miss their graduation. So I don't ever try to be a reader. Sorry. Hi from High Tech High. Thank you. Glad to see you on here. High Tech Point. Sorry. That's saying hi out there. Let's see. Nice High School gets a shout out. I'm not sure where they are. Mr. Rainey is the best. So got some fans out there, Mr. Rainey. SAQ tips. All right. So listen, I just this week and last week, I spent a lot of time putting together videos, a set of 6 videos, which go over different parts of the exam. I start off with how to approach the exam. Then I go through the 4 parts of the exam: the multiple choice part, the short answer question, the DBQ, and the long essay question. And then I end up with kind of like here's some words of encouragement at the end. I would advise you to go check that out. I'm going to share my screen here and sort of show you what this is going to look like, because then that way you can kind of see what I'm seeing. I'm going to go to YouTube here. And if you go to my YouTube page, it's YouTube, Paul Sargent's Worldwide Classrooms. But the AP Euro bit by bit is sort of the playlist. But you can see here, conquering the DBQ, tackling the long essay question. Let me go to the playlist here, and then you can see exactly what I'm looking at here. Where is my AP Euro bit by bit? It usually sits at the top. AP Euro bit by bit. There we go. 50 videos sitting there. So right down there at the end. And a lot of the questions that you're asking, honestly, are going to be answered here. But these last ones down here, starting with how do you prepare for the AP Euro exam, your SAQ, I just advise you to watch that to get the idea. The big idea of that is just answer the question. 2-3 sentences for each part. You don't have a lot of space. I show you in the video the size of the paper that you have to answer it on. So you just answer the question directly. So so you get in there and just sort of jump right in. Wow, I've got all kinds of thing. Oh, Anthony James was asking about civic humanism. Dude, watch the video. Seriously. Google doesn't give a clear definition. This is great. All right. Another message here from one of my students, actually, Abby Sterner. Yes. Hey, Sarge, you're doing great so far. Also, would you be able to do a quick overview of Romanticism if you have the time? All right. So, Abby, Romanticism. Romanticism is really defined by a move towards emotional, like trusting emotions in terms of sort of bettering the world. Romantic art has to do with an appreciation of nature. It's a little bit about the supernatural and things like that. and but really, like, if you understand that it's like fraught with emotion, then you get it. And being in my class, I mean, there's one painting I show all the time, and if you've watched AP Euro bit by bit, you might be able to guess. It is Delacroix's Liberty Leading the People, my absolute favorite painting of all time. I was so upset the last time I went to the Louvre. It was just it was so disappointing, because I went and I was like, I want to see my favorite painting. The Mona Lisa is nice, yeah, but Liberty Leading the People, like, I like it. And it was on loan, and then it was vandalized. So I still want to see it. Okay. European history wants to know. My friend Michelle would like to know what socialism was like in the Third Republic of France. Okay, so when you get into the Third Republic of France, socialism is starting to creep in as sort of it's becoming an international sort of movement. It's more gauged towards trying to work within the system in order to in order to make changes that will help people. Shorter working hours for workers, safety conditions, those sorts of things is really where it is in the Third Republic of France, which holds on for an amazingly long amount of time, despite the fact that no one really likes it. Amy Deck asked my prediction for the prompts. Never ask my prediction. No. I told my AP Gov students at the beginning of the year, is like, there is absolutely no way Donald Trump will be the nominee. This is a complete joke. You see? Don't ask me what my prediction is. I have no idea. And I can't even base it off what they've asked in the past years, because everything's totally new this year. So I don't know. Can you run through the important points of the French Wars of Revolution? Nate Stone, I can do this in 5 seconds. Okay. Number one, there's a conflict between the Catholics. Rome. France is like Catholic. Just sort of put that in your mind. France is Catholic. And there's this rising group of Calvinists who call themselves Huguenots, or Huguenot if you're French. I hope I did that one right. Might have to check the pronunciation, but Huguenots, right? So anyway, there's a very important moment during the St. Bartholomew's Massacre where the Catholics try to take out all of the Protestants. It doesn't work. They end up in a French war of religion. There's a whole bunch of Henrys that run around fighting each other, and in the end, Henry of Navarre, who is a Huguenot, he ends up winning this. He goes and in a triumphal march into Paris, and then he immediately goes and like switches religion to Roman Catholic, making him one of these politiques. I mean, this is smart, right? Saying Paris is worth a mass. And so then he consolidates his hold on it, because he realizes that there's no way that a Protestant can hold on to Catholic France. And he doesn't, because his successors go and they just like get rid of it all, and Catholicism comes back until, of course, the Revolution. Let's see. Stephanie Fleming, it looks like. What we'll need to know past the Cold War? That's a great question. Really, probably not much. Globalization is going to be big. Popular culture. You may need to know a little bit about conflicts in the Balkans after that, and the establishment of the European Union. But beyond that, I can't see a whole lot beyond the Cold War that you've done. English Civil War I've done. Lutheranism, Calvinism I've done. Thank you, Bailey, for sending out a lit AP review. I'm lit. That's great. I didn't just say it. I'm not lit. Could you go over the enlightened despots after the Cold War? Oh, after I talk about the Cold War. Okay, enlightened despots I've already talked about. 30 Years War I've already talked about. English Revolution I've already talked. People tend to have the same questions a lot. 30 Years War, done. Multiple choice. Oh, yeah, that one's going to be difficult. Okay, here's my advice for the multiple choice. And you can see that if you watch my video on the multiple choice section, you'll see that I give the same advice. It's this. I would start by looking at, obviously, if you practice this, you know this. There's going to be a prompt, and then there or some sort of like a stimulus, a passage, a picture, a chart, a map, something like that. And when you do that, then there are going to be questions that go along with it. Maybe 4 or 5 questions for each stimulus. What I would do is look at the questions first, because I think there's going to be some questions on the test that you can answer without ever looking at the stimulus, and you kind of feel like a fool, like you waste your time if you read the stimulus and then you look and you're like, wait a minute, I could have done this without that. I already knew this, and I already knew this, and I already knew this, and then you move on. But generally speaking, I mean, this really forces you to think through things. I mean, the old test was a trivia exam. It was, do you know these facts? 80 facts out of like 80,000 facts that could have been asked. So my advice is reason through it. What is making sense? And most importantly, eliminate answers that you know that are wrong. There are things which would be out of time period or irrelevant or something like that. Get rid of those, see what's left, use your best judgment, and then don't second guess yourself. Don't go back and change the answers. You guys have all done this. You've gone back and changed answers, and then you know it. And when you get the test back, like you go, I had that, and you see the eraser marks. Don't do it. Just don't do it. It's bad. Just go with your gut. It's usually right. All right. Good question. Let's see. 100 Years War, Kyle Karpinski. You don't need to know it. Sir Francis Bacon, Paul, what's good? Lasagna. Let's see. PTA mom Becky is out there. What is your website? Brenton, it looks like. My website is sargnotes.com. And I'll go ahead and just jump on that real quickly. I'll show you the website, because there are a lot of really good resources there for you. Let's see, where do I want to go? What am I doing? Oh, website, right. So if you go to sargnotes.com, you'll have this here. There's me, part of the Night's Watch. But AP European History is where you want to be. I've got your historical thinking skills. If you don't understand those, you can look over those. I've got the historical themes. This can be looked at thematically, this course. I've got the whole concept outline laid out here for you so that you can see the different parts of the concept outline. And if you click on any one of them, you can see exactly what it is that the College Board wants you to know. It gives you a big idea here at the top. And I totally took this straight from what they put. So this is not my writing. And an overview of what they want you to understand. And then the sub ideas of it with some specifics that you need to understand. Anything that's bulleted like this, Montesquieu's The Spirit of the Laws or David Hume or something like that, those will not be, at least according to what we're told, those will not be specifically tested. Those are going to be examples you can use. And then I have them laid out by periods. This is simply how I taught the course. So you can look at those different things. But the Euro exam review will be a good resource for all of you. You can see we've got 15 hours and 58 minutes. But I've got playlists here for you with an overview, some review resources. This part right here, I just can't share with anyone who's not one of my students, because that's inside of our school server and it just doesn't allow me to share out with anybody. So I get a lot of requests for access, and I just can't give it to you. If I click and say yes, try, then I get these error messages all over the place. And then I have exam prep videos here, and then I broke down for it different parts, and we worked through a review for 3 weeks, each of which I put a playlist on. So hopefully all of that will kind of help you. And that's basically the website. Just didn't know anything about website design, but decided to try it out. Explanation of the French Revolution and Napoleon. Jordan, there is almost an hour since you asked this question. I'm so sorry. French Revolution is pretty intricate, and you can get dragged into the details pretty quickly. Basically, it's a revolt against a monarchy which is completely bankrupting the country. It is an attempt early on to try and have a constitutional monarchy, but it gets more radical and radical as things go on. And so enemies of the revolution start to get killed. You end up with a reign of terror to try and get rid of everybody. Meanwhile, they're fighting all kinds of people who are trying to attack from the outside. The reign of terror falls because people don't like getting their heads cut off, or the threat of their heads cutting off, getting cut. People who were running that. And then Napoleon takes over as consul in a coup d'etat. He names himself dictator and later emperor, and then he basically tries to take over all of Europe, and is pretty successful till he goes to Russia. And then when he gets to Russia, the winter sort of stops him, and then he's basically done. So that's the quickie there. I would go through and just look over that in your, if you have a review book or something like that. That will help you as you go through. Can you give an example of an absolute monarch in length, Bob? Yeah, in length, Louis XIV. I have a 2-part video on Louis XIV. Talks all about how he's an absolute monarch. Keep in mind, they're big into their rule is only rule like they only answer to God. They can do whatever they want to. They build big monuments. They hold big standing armies. They fight lots of wars. Oftentimes they use secret police, and they totally take power away from the nobility. So that's like the big idea of absolute monarchs. But if you want to check out my videos on Louis XIV, those would really help. Annie Scully, Bismarck and his unification policies. This guy is the total chess player, the total poker player. One person you would never want to go against in a game. He unified Germany by effectively isolating. He fought a series of wars. Okay, 3 wars to go and unify Germany. And during those 3 wars, he set them up by totally isolating diplomatically the country that he was about to go to war with. And he knew he was going to go to war with them. So he made sure that they had no allies whatsoever. And then he fought them and he beat them. And when he eventually beat France, then he declared Germany unified under the Hohenzollern ruler, Wilhelm or William I, and declared the German Empire. Did so in the Palace of Versailles. That'll come back to bite him. But yeah, that's basically it. Again, I have a video on the unification of Germany, and Tom Ritchie has very, very good videos about Bismarck, and he goes into far more depth than I do. And I'll just say this now. Tom Ritchie deserves major shout out. He's helped me along a lot in this process. I only tried doing this about a year ago. And so, but he produces videos which are very in-depth. That's where he really shines. My videos tend to be shorter and far more general. And so if you're looking for a general explanation, watch mine. If you're looking for something to really get the whole picture, you can certainly watch his, or you could, look at your textbook. I don't know. That would be something new. I'm going to jump over to the questions over here because I'm totally ignoring this side of things, which keeps messing. Let's say Team AP. I don't know what that is. What are some tips to help with the new style questions? I've said that. Check out my videos because I think I went through most everything, and it's good to know. At this point, you either know your material or you don't know your material. And as the point I make in my last video is like, don't stay up all night tonight getting ready for this thing, because if you fall asleep on the exam, I don't care how much you crammed, it's not going to make any difference because you're going to be asleep. Or you're going to be tired. You're not going to be able to think. So get some sleep. But it is better, I think, at this point to understand what's being tested and how you're being scored than to spend your time stressing and frantically trying to remember tons and tons of details. Because, sometimes you don't need them. So anyway, that would be my advice for you. Let's see, all kinds of questions here, and they're all really, they've been sitting around there for a long time. My goodness. DBQ writing tips, same thing. The one thing I will say about DBQ writing tips is that you can write a good DBQ and know nothing about the topic. I mean, if you can interpret documents and contextualize it somehow based on what, like time period is, you can synthesize at the end, you can analyze the documents. The only point you'd really miss out on is the point of outside information. And if you don't have that and you get a 6 out of 7, you totally rocked this thing. So, so go through, read the instructions, because the instructions will remind you of what it is that you're going to be asked to do as you go through and do the DBQ. We got price revolution. Price revolution really has to do with the influx of silver and gold from the New World, and prices change. I mean, it causes huge inflation. Prices go up. It's not good for the common person, and it totally bankrupts the Spanish because they're just like spending like there's nobody's business. Yeah, that's basically the price revolution right there. Oliver Cromwell's rise to power and impact. He rose to power because he was the architect of cutting off the English monarch Charles II's head, or at least one of them, and he established a Puritan commonwealth, we'll call it. And in that Puritan commonwealth, he effectively banned everything that was fun. Got rid of partying, dancing, Christmas, and then went into Ireland and killed a lot of people. And then he died. And his impact was that it brought back the monarchy. Unless you're Irish, then you still hate him. Wow, price revolution. Jordan, you were really on this one. 7 Years' War, 100 Years' War, we've done that. Price revolution, we've done that. English Revolution, we've done that. Price. There's a lot of price. Edict of Nantes. Okay, the Edict of Nantes is part of the French Wars of Religion. And this is where Henry IV, after going into power, puts forth this idea of religious toleration, that the Huguenots will be tolerated. They can practice their religion. In fact, he gives them fortified cities where they can be safe. It is in place until Louis XIV does away with it. It says, nope, ain't gonna happen. We're all Catholic. And he sides with the Catholic Church to help solidify his power, along with Baroque art. Then he goes a little crazy and goes Rococo all over Versailles, and like, this stuff is so ugly. God, I hate Rococo. Anyway, that is the Edict of Nantes right there. Quick overview of the scientific revolution, Kyle Karpinski. So this is starting to question the authority of the church. In the Middle Ages, the church was the final authority on everything. They knew what God wanted. They interpreted the Bible, and they went beyond and sort of made judgments on all kinds of things, which were probably beyond the scope of what they could realistically do. But they were in the situation that no one else was doing it. So along comes science. And you have guys like Copernicus and Kepler and Galileo and Newton and the invention of the scientific method with Bacon and Descartes. And they challenge the church and they say, you got to observe. You can't just go off some like basic tenet that the Bible is right word for word, and you have to kind of be able to prove it with evidence. And that gets them into some conflict there. But it changes people's ways of thinking. And I guess, it necessarily didn't happen during the scientific revolution, but in many ways, science has become, over the centuries, the priests that the old school priests, it used to be that we would look to priests for answers. Now we look to scientists for answers. In fact, today I was listening to a thing on NPR where scientists are now coming out and saying the worst thing you can do for your ears is use Q-tips and clean them out. Go figure. Actually, it turns out that you end up pushing more wax in than you get out, and that can be bad for you. Didn't know that. Priest told me that. I might not have believed him. Scientists tell me that. I'm like, not so good for the Q-tip people. All right, back to Twitter here. The Cuban Missile Crisis. Ironically, I really don't think they even ask about the Cuban Missile Crisis in the concept outline. So if it's not in there, I'm not gonna jump into it. But it is the closest we came to nuclear war. No, you don't need to know anything about the Cuban Missile Crisis, there, Jordan. It just isn't in there, so set it aside. Let's see. Do you think there will be a European history from the 90s? Chanakya. I hope I got that one right. The only thing, well, with the 90s, yeah, I think the conflict in the Balkans is going to be could be on there. The creation of the EU definitely will be on there. And Angela Merkel, I kind of doubt it, honestly, but who am I to know? I guess I could just put in Merkel and see. If you guys haven't downloaded this concept outline, this is a great way to just see. No, you don't need to know anything about Angela Merkel. What are the key concepts of liberalism, conservatism, socialism, and the difference between Nazism and fascism? Alexander Kennedy, the all-encompassing questions. Okay. Liberalism, conservatism, and nationalism are ideas that really gained traction in the 19th century, the early part of the 19th century. Liberalism, think American Constitution. That's it. Freedom of speech, limits on government, separation of powers, popular elect governments with checks and balances, all of that. Conservatism is a move to fight against ideas of liberalism and to maintain the old order of monarchies, aristocracies, peasants, to try and keep monarchs on the throne no matter what, and fight against any threat to them collectively for a while. And then socialism, you have different phases of socialism. In fact, I did a video on 19th century socialism, which goes deeply into this. But the idea is basically this: people should help each other, and there should be a basic standard of living. There are flaws with capitalism, and they get exposed during the Industrial Revolution, the first and the second. And socialism tries to address those. And set up a system where people kind of help each other more like a family than what we think of as a society. It evolves over time, so that now socialism is the providing of certain services to everybody, healthcare, education, stuff like that. The difference between Nazism and fascism is really not all that much of a difference. Nazism is German fascism. It really is. There's the whole anti-Semitic side to it, but it's service to the state. It is state before everything else. It's the idea that personal ambitions and things that go outside the needs of the state and the government are not really all that welcome, and you should just fall into line. Amanda Romiser asks, "Who is Metternich?" I would totally know Metternich. Metternich is the big guy behind conservatism in the early 19th century. Sorry, he's the architect of the Congress of Vienna and settlement that ends the Napoleonic Wars. He's the architect of the Concert of Europe and the idea of a balance of power. And he's a major force for conservatism until he's driven out. That's Metternich. Yeah. Can you please talk about intellectualism over time? Eli, I'd love to, but that is going way. I can't do something that drawn out. Jamie Everett, thank you for the shout out there with the Cram sesh. Jordan, if we need to know a top 10 big ideas, what would they be to really look over before the exam? 10 big ideas. Okay. Wow. 10 big ideas. I would say go to my page on the concept outline and look at the biggest idea of all of them for each part. And those are the big ideas they want you to know. I mean, they haven't held back. They've published what you need to know. So go and check it out. And I don't know where Upper Grand Lagoon, Florida is, Jordan, but it's May 5th and it's like 50 degrees here in Pennsylvania. So I kind of wish I was in Florida. Jealous. Let's see. 100 Years' War, we don't need to know about. Divine Right and Monarchy, we've already talked about. The Reform Act of 1832 and the Poor Law. Okay, good one. Hunter. We haven't talked about this yet. So you have all these revolutions in the early 19th century that like spread all over Europe, and they attack the monarchs. And you've got they all start in France. They spread. There's the saying that when France sneezes, Europe catches cold, which is a good way to remember those things. The revolutions of 1830 and 1848. The British, man, brilliant. They totally bypass most of all of this by simply giving more franchise, giving the vote and more say to more people, and then passing laws which try and help people who need help. And when you do that, you don't have people barricading the streets. So it's that simple. They do things gradually, and people appreciate gradual change. People who get the vote, like, they use it. And so Britain escapes almost all of the turmoil of the 19th century that's going on in all of these other countries. And they end up, quite frankly, on the end of, when all the monarchies collapsed in the 20th century, or almost all of them, Britain still has one. The UK. Elizabeth II just turned 90 like 2 weeks ago. They still have a monarch. They got 4 generations that are in line. So nice, good question, and I like that. Let's see, what else do we have here? The idea of Marxism and how it had an impact on Marxist economics. Okay, Nolan, Marxism is all about Marxism is the idea that there will be a revolution. he's writing sort of near the end of the first industrial revolution. He's seeing that capitalism is built on the idea that you take as much advantage of the poor as you possibly can because they have no power. You give them the worst possible working conditions, you pay them as little as you possibly can, and you make yourself rich in the process. If this happens, he says, the proletariat, the workers, will gain a class identity. They will rise up in revolution against the bourgeoisie, those people who own all the factories and all of the stuff that, places they work. They are going to overthrow them, and then they will establish a perfect society in which in which there's no private property, really. And that drives Marxist economics because, well, Marxist economics, I don't know that we've ever really seen Marxist economics. We've seen versions of people's interpretations of Marxist economics, but the idea of a Marxist economic system would be simply this. Everyone works according to their ability. You work as hard as you can at whatever it is that you're good at, and you contribute to make a better society. Then you take from it only that you need. You don't try and get rich. You don't try, you can't get poor. And then that way everybody's happy. It's, again, kind of like, I think of it like a family, people contribute differently to families, and they take what they need from the family, but they don't really tend to take more than they need from the family. In most cases, some do. But that's kind of the idea. It's little got flaws. Let's see, Kritika, thank you for doing the shout out there. Okay, all right. Let's see. Enlightened absolutists, I've already done. Ashley, Hannah Rose is here. Oh, Hannah Rose, hello. Important absolutist rulers, I would go, Alyssa, with Louis XIV, and it being the number one. Peter the Great is probably a good number two. If you know those two, don't get bogged down in all the Prussians, Fredericks, because it just it gets confusing. All right, there's too many of them. Nina is doing cram time with me. Thank you very much for do that. I love the pictures. This is great. Cromwell and the things he did. I've already done that. What exactly happened during the fall of communism in Yugoslavia? Yeah. After communism fell in Yugoslavia, there was an absolute disaster because you unleashed all kinds of forces. There were too many peoples that were sort of pulled together into one, and they fought against one another a lot, and it's still going on, and there are revolutions and all of that. It's yeah, kind of ugly, really. Excuse me. Okay, I can keep up with this. Let's see. Social changes leading up to World War I. Big time. The period leading up to World War I in terms of European society is huge, because the Second Industrial Revolution is providing people with more products, cheaper products, more places to buy them, and more disposable income to buy them with. You see the rise of leisure activities, professional sports. The Olympics comes around. We got that going on in Rio, but the first Olympics happens in Paris in 1896. So you really have this incredible change in the standard of living. Plumbing, electricity, radio, entertainment. I mean, everything changes, so that it becomes very much like the modern world that you live in today, that I live in today, that we all live in today. Although they didn't have this. This was stuff that was like, no, this is wow. Let's see what else we got down here. When Napoleon staged the coup d'etat, was the government in France the Second Republic? It was the Directory, the Second French Republic. Okay. It was the Directory, yes, and that's who he overthrew. It didn't function well at all, and so he got rid of it. Totally got rid of it. The Second Republic, however, is actually established technically after the 1830 revolution in France, in which Louis Philippe comes to power. And yeah, that just doesn't last. Well, I guess it lasts 18 years, pretty much. Yeah. No, wait. I'm sorry. See, my brain's getting fried already. The Second Republic actually starts after 1848, when Louis Napoleon is elected to become sort of the leader of the Second Republic. He then quickly turns it into an empire. The Third Republic is established after they overthrow him. The Germans do, and establish, Germany. Let's see. Wow, I'm going way back here. English Revolution. I've already talked about the English Revolution a little bit. Helping a girl out. The Age of Anxiety. The Age of Anxiety. I don't know that I love that word, but it's the idea that that all of the things, like, this is early 20th century, okay, and it's a time where things which have been generally accepted for a long time are starting to be put into question. And it makes people uneasy because the idea of progress is not really playing out the way that they thought. And while there's a rising middle class, while things are getting better, there's still a lot of work to be done. And people are, science is drawing people into questions of what is like real. It's not as predictable as Newton thought it was. The discovery of the atom, and like splitting it apart, and blah, everything kind of goes crazy. So that's kind of the age of anxiety, and people are anxious. Trying to make this as quick as possible. Thank you for doing this. You are so welcome. Jordan Miles, you are the question king here. I don't know what upvoted questions are, so I don't understand with all of this, but Age of Anxiety I've already taken care of with all of this, and English Revolution, French Revolution, Napoleon Price Revolution, a lot of this stuff I've already done. Let's see. Oof. Congress of Vienna, Cavour, Garibaldi, the red shirts. Okay, Cavour, Garibaldi, and the red shirts. This is really the story of the Italian Revolution, or the Italian unification. Cavour tries to create and to methodically move through to unify Italy finally, and after a very long time. Garibaldi, depending on what you read about Garibaldi, some say that he did it on his own, and some say that Cavour kind of pushed him along. He went and invaded Sicily with his army of red shirts, took over southern Italy really quickly, started marching up. And when they got up to Rome and kind of hit the point where Cavour's armies were kind of facing them, rather than have a civil war, Garibaldi gave over all of southern Italy to Cavour, and so that unified it, except for Rome, which is which is important. Here's a good question. I like this one. Could you please explain what the 4 periods are and why the College Board split it up like that? The why is always the tough question. I guess because you have to split it, so you try and split it. It used to be split in half at 1815. Like, everything before the Congress of Vienna was like old Europe, and then everything afterwards was new Europe. They've subdivided those, And the reason I think, okay, the first period goes from like the Renaissance, which is definitely a change from what came before. This is where you get into like a periodization kind of question on the LEQ. Because there's this revival of learning, there's this new emphasis on art and learning, and revival of all kinds of things that opens up the door for things like exploration and the Reformation and all of that. They then split it at 1648, which is the end of the 30 Years' War with the Treaty of Westphalia, which ends all of the fighting over religion, or at least for the most part, it does. It's generally considered to be the last religious war, and it begins a period where wars of dynasties are going to be sort of the big topic of Europe. They're like the big things we talk about. And these dynasties rise up and they try to hold on to power. You've got Romanovs, you've got Hohenzollerns, you've got Bourbons, you've got you got all these dynasties, right? The Habsburgs. So they're up there. And then of course you have the French Revolution, which throws everything out of whack, but it's over in 1815. By the time 1815 comes along, now you've got a reestablishment, or at least an attempt to reestablish these things. But the ideas of the Enlightenment, the ideas of the French Revolution, they've started to push the middle class up along with the Industrial Revolution. And then there's the split at 1914, because honestly, when World War I is fought, it changes the way Europe looks at everything. And it changes from this real belief in European progress and European total superiority into an age after that where they begin to question these things. So that's why I think they split it up into those four periods. I could be a little bit wrong, but kind of they had to at some point. All right, I'm going to jump over here back onto Twitter feed here because I'm at least an hour behind here. Major turning points I already took care of. Major concepts of World War I, Shelby Fox. Okay, so Shelby, look, major points of World War I. Here's what I would understand. I would understand the causes of World War I. Very simply, Maine. You have militarism. You have the alliance system, which is totally screwed up after Otto von Bismarck is fired. You have imperialism, which in itself doesn't necessarily cause problems, but when you've got a lot of sort of artificial borders that aren't really along rivers or mountain ranges that are easily defended, you're going to have border skirmishes, and you're going to have this and that. And you have these countries that are trying to do major building projects that are going to cross over other countries' territories and all this. And yeah, so they get into conflict there. And then nationalism, which is like this real pride, like we can do this better than anyone else kind of thing. And so that would be, sort of the causes. The actual fighting of World War I, you don't need to know much about, other than that it was really bad. And it was bad because of technology, with the machine gun, with poison gas, with the arrival of the tank real late in the war, airplanes. It made the war pretty darn horrible on a scale that people had never seen before. And then, of course, the Treaty of Versailles that ended the war, starting off with sort of like the high pie in the sky ideals of the 14 points of what Woodrow Wilson, which totally ignored all of European history and weren't going to work. And it turned into revenge against Germany, trying to make them pay for what they had done. Yeah, that's it. Again, if you look on my if you look on my YouTube page, I have videos that cover the causes of the war, the course of the war, and the Versailles Treaty. I think those will answer your questions pretty concisely there. They aren't too long. Let's see. Trevor Hunt. Okay, so now here's a good question. What is the worst possible scenario when testing for AP Euro, and how can you make the best out of it? I would say the worst possible scenario when testing would be a fire. Making the best of it, run. Um, yeah, worst possible scenario. Look, what's going to be asked is a crapshoot. They've got a 200 and some odd page document that tells you everything that could be on it. And they're going to ask you 55 multiple choice questions. They're going to ask you 4 short answer questions, 1 DBQ, and you're going to choose between 2 LEQs. So with all of that, like, it's a crapshoot. The worst possible scenario is that somehow, some way, somewhere along the line, you studied really hard and you studied all of the things that weren't asked. That would be the worst thing. Yeah, maybe a heart attack. Please don't do that. But anyway, how do you make the best out of it? You just try and use what you know. While you're in there, your worst enemy is going to be your own self-doubt. No historian, no teacher knows it all. I'm serious. I don't care how much you think I know. I don't care how much you think your teacher knows. I don't care how much you think the guy who wrote the textbook knows. Like, it's impossible in history to know everything. It's impossible. It can't happen. There's too much. So you kind of have to, like, go with what you do know and then try and contextualize beyond that. Does that make sense? Just be smart about it and be calm and be confident. I say that all the time because it's never that bad. Okay, so with the multiple choice, Ashley Roy has asked, what's the best way to go about understanding and analyzing the documents? Are art cartoons in the multiple choice? Understanding and analyzing the documents, I'm hoping that you guys have had a lot of practice with that this year, because that's going to be kind of key, understanding these documents. There will be art. I don't know about cartoons, but maybe political cartoons in the multiple choice. They're good. They're good because if we only had passages as your prompts for them, or your stimuli for the multiple choice, you would never get through 55 questions in 55 minutes. But when you've got a piece of art and you really just, like, you don't have to spend time reading it and analyzing all that, you just, boom, there it is. It's going to save you some time. So, you know, that's going to be good. Hopefully they'll make good use of that, and it looks like they probably will. Charts as well, although charts can be problematic at times. Let's see. Dre, can you provide anything that will easily compare and contrast World War I and World War II? World War I was horrible. World War II made World War I look like a cakewalk. That's pretty much it. That's a big deal. Comparing them, numbers, about 10 million dead in World War I, about 50 million dead in World War II. World War I ends with a truce, because, you know, they're just kind of like, no one's going to win this trench warfare. World War II ends with the total destruction of Berlin on the invasion, and the bombing, dropping 2 atomic bombs. If you go by the Treaty of Versailles and you go by the Nuremberg trials, they were both caused by Germany. And I think you could argue that with World War I a little bit more. World War II, it's kind of hard to say that that wasn't Hitler's fault. Kind of hard to say. And, you know, just as a true American, like, pretty much when we came in and really started going, the war was over. Sorry to those of you who don't come from America. 30 years more time. How was 1848 a turning point in which history failed to turn? There's a good question. Help, I'm jumping. Okay. 1848 was not a turning point because pretty much every revolution failed. And in order to have a turning point, you have to have things succeed. So yeah, every 1848 revolution, with the sole exception of France. Okay, so France gets rid of a ruler who promised liberal reforms and then didn't do it, and got another ruler who promised liberal reforms and then would not do it. So that's why it's not a turning point in that. Let's see. Yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. Here's one. Other than 20th century, what do you think is important about Russia? This was asked at 7:15. My gosh, you guys hit questions right off the bat. Other than 20th century, what do you think is important about Russia? I would know about the rule of Peter the Great and Catherine the Great. I would know about their role in the Crimean War, in which they realized that they couldn't compete with the rest of Europe militarily. I would understand their role, or at least their environment's role, in ending Napoleon's rule, invasion. Sorry, and those things are probably pretty good, I would say. Oh yeah, what is the percentage for each section on the test? Okay, let me see if I can do this off the top of my head. I can't do this off the top of my head. The multiple choice section is 40%. The let's see, scoring. Nope, that's not it. Sorry, I know it's right before this. Here it is. All right. Let's see. Multiple choice question, 40%. Short answer question, 20%. DBQ, 25%. And LEQ, 15%. So there's your breakdown on how those things are going to be scored. Good question, because that's important to know. Focus on things where you're going to get more, more things. Oh, I'm starting to see this. So wait a minute. If I'm up at the top here, I get people who have a lot of things. Okay. All right. Could you briefly go over the Austrian succession and the Spanish succession and their effects on Europe? All right. So these are two major wars. Austrian succession is fought over the fact that no one wants a woman on the throne of Austria. There's a big effort at what's called the pragmatic sanction. Accept my daughter as the monarch of Austria. Promise that you won't attack when I die. Lots of countries sign on to this. As soon as the death happens, then Maria Theresa comes onto the throne and everyone attacks. So they fight a war. It's one of those wars where they fight, they gain, lose territory, and then basically at the end of it, when they come up with the peace treaty, they say, you know what, let's just go back to the way things were, put all the boundaries back to the way they were before the war. Which is like, yeah, okay. Spanish succession is the last major war of Louis XIV's reign. It's his attempt to put his grandson, not sure, I forget the exact relation. Anyway, he's going to put a Bourbon on the throne of Spain. Yeah, the rest of Europe doesn't like that because they say we don't want that much power in the hands of one family, especially not with Louis XIV, who we've kind of been fighting in wars with for a long time. And so they fight against him. They beat him. His wars are done. Yeah. So nice and sort of brief there. Is it true that if someone dies during the exam, everyone passes? If so, someone take one for the team. I, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's asking a lot of someone. I mean, my goodness. This is not that important that someone should die over it. Come on. Let's see. Important treaties they might ask about and their effects. Okay, so this is a big asked question. Important treaties. I would know the Peace of Westphalia, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. The Peace of Augsburg, which gives official recognition to Lutheranism in the German states in the Holy Roman Empire. I would know the Treaty of Westphalia, which puts an end to the religious wars and begins sort of dynastic things. I would know the Congress of Vienna, which sets in motion, the forced conservatism and tries to ends the Napoleonic Wars. I would know the Treaty of Versailles, which ends World War I and causes World War II and lots of other problems. There's probably more out there, but I just can't think of any right now that would be like big. All about that. Can you explain the Treaty of Utrecht and how we should go about remembering the treaties of Paris? Yeah, there are a lot of treaties of Paris. You know why? Because Paris is a nice place to go. I don't think you're going to get anything that's that specific. When we look at Utrecht, again, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to go into anything that they're not going to ask because it's great to have knowledge, but tonight it's all about getting ready for tomorrow. So let's say Utrecht. You don't need to know it. How about that? Treaty of Paris. There are so many, but I'll put it in and see what they say. Treaty of Paris. Yeah, no, they don't specify any that you need to know on this. It doesn't seem to be all that big on treaties, so I wouldn't worry about the treaties and stuff like that. What are some good ways to come up with stuff I know absolutely nothing about with the LEQ? All right, so on the LEQ, I've gotten this question a lot. Okay, on the LEQ, you're going to get basically the same question twice. If it's a causation question, it's going to say what caused changes in it's going to be the same question with two different time periods. You're going to know something about one of them. You really are. I wouldn't stress about the LEQ. I really would. Everyone stresses about the LEQ because it's the one where you get nothing. You just get a prompt, right? But it's also the least important in terms of like scoring wise. In terms of weight on the exam, it's the least important, and it's the last thing you're going to do. You're going to be struggling to like keep anything in your head at that point. I mean, you will have been going for close to 3 hours at this point, and when the LEQ comes about, you're going to have trouble. Hopefully, of the two things, you can come up with something to write about. Okay, absolutely nothing. You're screwed. You can try and write, I would write something. I wouldn't just sort of give up and not write anything, but you're going to have a hard time coming up with some stuff. You can probably write about the time period. You can try and throw down some causes if it's a causation question. If it's a periodization question, you talk about what was different before and after. If it is if it's a question about continuity and change over time, you can make some broad statements. You might not have a lot of super specific details, but you can at least get like half credit. You can pull three points out of this thing fairly easily if you can write, and really that's what it is. If you can write, you can pull some points out of this. I honestly doubt you're going to hit a point where you don't know anything about it. Let's see. Yeah, sorry, I didn't. The whole thing about the voted questions. I didn't. This is my first time ever using the Q&A, so I don't know. It's kind of a nice thing there. What could I use as synthesis for a DBQ or an LEQ on the Reformation? Depends on the question, honestly. The synthesis is what all AP teachers are freaking out about. I try to make it easy. Synthesis is just relating it to anything else you know, relating the prompt to a different time period, relating the prompt to a different area of the world, relating the prompt to what it led to, relating the prompt to a different discipline. Like if you take psychology and it has something to do with psychology, you could relate it to that. It should be a pretty easy, I think, point to get. But then again, I don't know exactly how hard they're going to grade this thing. Just make sure it's explicit. And I always say put it right at the end, because that's it. So if it's a Reformation, and it's about like the causes of the Reformation, for example, you would write about the causes of the Reformation, here, this, that, and the other, and then you would synthesize it by saying that what it led to was a Europe which was no longer divided, which was no longer unified by Catholicism, and would lead to a number of religious wars, and would lead to ongoing conflicts between religions throughout Europe through the centuries, and would possibly even, you could say, undermine faith in religion itself. You could even relate it to today's conflicts about Syrian refugees coming into Europe, and the backlash that is largely targeting a difference of religion. So there's lots of ways you can do this. I mean, the synthesis is like the wide open kind of question. The Noble Savage, I've been your best friend. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I hope that my videos have been helping people. That's great. Major artistic movements do you think will be on the test? I think you're going to be asked about Renaissance art. You're going to be asked about Baroque art, Romanticism, I would know, Impressionism, and Post-Impressionism, although I don't know that they're going to ask you too much about the difference between the two. And maybe sort of a generalized question about the development of modern art. I think if you get those, I think you pretty much are covered. But that's just a guess. All the art movements are covered in here. So the difficulty is you get, as you move on in the course, like you start off with Renaissance and Mannerism, like boom, boom. And then you have Baroque, and Baroque just kind of hangs on for a long time. You have this brief period of neoclassicism and like what I like to call eggshell Baroque, which is Rococo. And then Romanticism comes along, and then all of a sudden you have like this explosion of different art movements, with realism and Impressionism and Post-Impressionism and Cubism and German Expressionism and Modernism and Postmodernism, and abstract art, pop art. It just kind of goes absolutely nuts. So I just focus on about 4 or 5 major ones and figure that should probably be okay. One more from here, and then I'll jump back onto the Q&A. The Princess Bride reference. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, it's a good reference. And if you haven't watched that clip, like seriously, look at it. This is what you do in your head. It is. Let's see. Let's see. There's a lot here about the 100 Years' War. You guys don't need to know anything about that. Anything that has to do, any question that has to do with like the different types of questions, I would say simply watch the videos that I've posted in the last few days, because it'll give you more information than I'm going to be able to give you here. One more here, and then I'll get back over to my Q&A, which obviously you guys are upvoting stuff, and now that I get the upvoting thing, that's good. 100 Years War, guys, seriously, you don't need to know the 100 Years War. Polly Bergman. Oh, here's a good question. Is the new format of the exam going to be easier? I don't know. The old format, you just had to know a lot of facts. You really had to memorize it. I mean, you know, there was a meme that was going around last year, which was basically, you know, you want to know what you need to know for AP Euro? And then there's a picture of a teacher holding up the textbook. Just read this. Yeah, it was literally, you had to know the entire book, and then you hope that the 80 questions they were going to ask you were going to be about that. So from that standpoint, it's easier because they've told us exactly what's eligible. However, they've added, like, you really got to think these things through. This is not, do you know a question? Do you know a fact? This is, can you reason through based on a passage or a stimulus that you're given. All the answers are not going to be in the passages or the pictures. That's the whole point. Generally speaking, on the multiple choice, what you'll get is you'll get your passage, your picture, your chart, whatever it is. You'll get one or two questions which are, you know, like pretty much answer the question based on this. And then it's going to globalize a little bit. It might be like, you know, who from 200 years later might agree with this? And now you're drawing on knowledge from that. And then, you know, what might be the results of something like this? So not all the answers are going to be in there, but they're going to help as you go along. So yeah, we're going to sort of jump over here to the uplisted things. What are the important things, events, people to know about the French Wars of Religion? I think I've already talked about this. Really, the major events of the French Wars of Religion are the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, in which Catholics try to like get rid of all of the Protestants. And the accession of the throne of Henry of Navarre, who becomes Henry IV. He's a Huguenot. He converts to Catholicism, in order to sort of hold the country together, and then passes the Edict of Nantes, which gives official recognition to the Huguenots. I think if you know that, you probably got the French Wars of Religion. Things, events, people. That's pretty much it. Could you go over the Dreyfus Affair? Okay, so this happens during the French Third Republic. I have a video on the Dreyfus Affair that you can watch for more detail. Basically, what happens is a French military officer gets falsely accused of wrongdoing. He gets convicted and sent off to a penal colony, largely because he's Jewish. It becomes a big thing in the press. Emile Zola, who is a famous writer, you know, writes a big front page article with it's headlined with "J'accuse." You know, he accuses the establishment of being anti-Semitic. They end up dropping all of the charges against Dreyfus, and you know, it's really like it unearths anti-Semitism a little bit. Anti-Semitism was everywhere. It's not just this German thing that pops up in the 1930s. It's like pervasive. But yeah, if you want more information, watch the video that I have about that. Here's a question: Louis XIV and Louis XVI, and the most important treaty. I've talked about Louis XIV. Biggest accomplishments are really solidifying the absolute monarchy in France. He totally emasculates the nobility. He makes them come and live at Versailles. He takes away all of the power that they used to have in their respective provinces. He involves them in court intrigue that takes over their lives, completely subjugates them to himself, so that they have to like dress him and like all kinds of things. And these are big honors for them. Gets them involved in gossip and all that stuff, and pulls them completely out of the political spectrum, thus solidifying power completely in himself. Um, and then he ends up fighting a whole bunch of wars, most of which he loses. Louis XVI is a much less powerful and strong leader. He tends to sort of, give in on everything. He misuses funds. He's just not a very strong leader. And of the two of them, he's the one who gets beheaded because the French Revolution happens under him, partially because he overspends at Versailles and he's just driving the country into bankruptcy, but also because he helps out the Americans, which further drives the French into bankruptcy. And while he's doing that, all those soldiers go over and they hear the words of the Declaration of Independence, and they start hearing about natural rights, and they bring that stuff back with them, which doesn't exactly slow down the French Revolution. So very different people. Louis XIV, strong, sure of himself, totally in charge. Louis XVI, weak. Let's see. Can you talk about perestroika and the NEP in the Soviet Union? Okay, we're jumping decades here. NEP is the new economic policy. It's set up during Lenin, during Lenin's rule, and basically, and again, I know I say this over and over, but I made a lot of videos for you guys. So there, I have a video about the new economic policy. And basically it's this: in the face of communism, in the early days of communism, there's a realization that communism isn't going to be able to support the economy that is needed to fight a civil war. And so the NEP opens up private enterprise on a limited basis, but people can run businesses and things. And so it introduces capitalism into a communist system. Perestroika is an opening up along the same lines, but whereas the NEP is a temporary move and is followed by Stalin, who shuts it down completely and is like, no, and then kills lots of people to, make sure it works. The perestroika is like one of the major factors that leads to the downfall of the Soviet Union and of communism. That's sort of the differences and the similarities between the two of those. Let's see. Here are the September massacres and their importance in history, what they'll likely, I don't believe that September massacres are even in here. So I don't think you need to know anything about September massacres. No. Ignore it. They won't incorporate it on the exam at all. This one keeps coming up: 100 Years War and 30 Years War. The 100 Years War, you do not need to know about. Many of you did an introductory chapter on the late Middle Ages, and it's great to set it up, and I love, setting the stage for the whole thing, but you don't need to know anything about the 100 Years War. The 30 Years War, I think I've gone over 2 or 3 times. If you look, I'm pretty sure Tom Ritchie has some good videos on the 30 Years War. I have a video on the Treaty of Westphalia, which ends the 30 Years War. You don't need to know really anything about wars themselves and what happens during a war, battles and stuff like that. They're not going to ask about that stuff, so I wouldn't worry about it. One more from over here: Austrian and Spanish succession. I've already done that. Any tips on what to do during the few hours before the exam? It really kind of depends on your situation. Like, schools have different policies. If you are able to take the morning off, I would say relax, get a good breakfast, go out to breakfast, get a good breakfast, review a few things, watch a couple of videos, but just de-stress. Okay. Um, Maybe take a practice test if you want to. There's lots of them online that you can access. Review books have them. There's practice multiple choice questions probably in your textbook. You can do those sorts of things. If you are stuck in school, I would say go with it and just do a normal school day and don't stress about it, and it'll all come with you. I bring my students into my classroom in the morning and we do kind of games and things like that. Tom Ritchie tomorrow is going to be having his breakfast. What is he calling it? His AP review breakfast or something like that. That's pretty good because he goes over some of the main topics. He takes questions. He's really good. He does this kind of stuff all the time. He's very good at it. And we're going to be tuning in for that. I'll be joining him on there for a while. So that's something you can do. If you're at home, you can watch that. And you can watch my videos, scroll through them, see what you don't know, and then just watch them and maybe they'll help. Certainly, if you only watch a few videos between now and the test, I would say, if you haven't, watch the videos that I put up about the test itself and the last few videos, because those things will really give you like an understanding of how the test is going to be graded, and that will allow you to maximize your points, really. I mean, otherwise you're going to go into it blind and trying to just memorize everything about European history. I'm telling you, it ain't going to happen. It's just, you can't do it. All right. I am going to ask you guys for a little quick break here. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put on the video that I just posted today. I'm gonna share my screen with you. Give me 5 minutes, and I'll be right back. And until then, let me just I'll just kind of put it from here. But this is what I posted this morning, and it's just some final thoughts on the AP Euro exam. And it's short. I would show you some of these other ones, but they're longer. So I might even cut this one off before it's done. But I need to take just a quick break. So if you would, here.
Hi, my name is Paul Sargent. Welcome once again to AP Euro Bit by Bit, the series in which I've been trying to teach you modern European history in small bite-sized pieces so that you can better understand it. And today it is the eve of the AP exam. And I thought that I would take just a few minutes to talk to you about what to expect tomorrow and just give you some final thoughts so that we can kind of wrap up what I'm going to call season 1 of AP Euro Bit by Bit. So let's get started. Now, first of all, I have to say, please, the stress level that you're feeling, I'm sure, is absolutely very high right now. And you got to understand, like, this is not unusual. We get very stressed about these tests, and we get all worried that we don't know everything that we're supposed to know. I get the same way when I take a test. So please understand that everyone's feeling the same thing. In addition, this is the first year of the new format of the AP exam. So not only do AP teachers stress about what's actually going to be on the exam and how it's going to be tested, but students are probably feeling that as well. So understand this is kind of an experimental year. But most importantly, I want to say this. Throughout the year, you've been working very hard at this. You've been studying, you've been taking notes, you've been listening to lectures, you've been watching videos, you've been doing activities. Hopefully along the way, you've acquired an appreciation for, well, history. And I want to make the point that history is not about the names, the dates. The names and the dates are good. And of course, people play a huge part in history. We wouldn't have any without them. And the dates really serve us as a way to put a chronology down on things so that we can say that things happened on particular dates. But what you're going to find if you go through and study history is that history is bigger than that. It is bigger than the facts that make up our basic understanding of it. It's really an investigation into the human experience in this world. And it has lessons for us for the past, as well as lessons for us for the future. And understanding the big picture, understanding the themes and the trends of history are really what historians focus on doing. It's really what gets you to better understand the world around you. So I hope along the way, you've gained a greater understanding for how the past has affected the present. As for the exam tomorrow, you've done all that you can do, almost all that you can do up to this point. The most important thing you can do tonight is to get some sleep. Let's face it, many of you are going to want to cram all night, which is going to be great, and you'll probably learn some things. However, if you fall asleep while you're taking the exam, what you know doesn't help so much. That's just kind of the way it is.
Kate said she wanted to come in
So
for a
get some
second.
sleep tonight. But before you do that, I will be holding an online review session. The link is here, so go ahead and set yourself up. You're going to go to my website. That will have the link onto the YouTube feed. I'll be taking questions tonight during the live review session on my Twitter account @PSargent. So go ahead and set yourself up on Twitter. Subscribe to my Twitter account so that you have it and you can ask questions if you have them. Finally, I want to say this. I began this project just a little over a year ago. And over the course of the year, and especially over the course of the last couple of months, I've been overwhelmed by the positive response that I've gotten. The people who have commented on my videos have been so nice, so complimentary, and so thankful to have this resource that it energizes me to make more and more and more, and to be able to provide more and more and more. So as a final thought, I just want to thank you. Thanks for all the work you do. Thanks for all of the hard dedication that you put in all year. And thanks for watching. Because without you, AP Euro Bit by Bit would be really
cut
just
myself.
What?
a bunch of videos that no one looks
You
at.
cut yourself.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Oh.
that's my final thought. Good luck on the AP exam. Go in with confidence. That's the thing that's going to get you through. Know what you know and use logic to work out the things that you don't know. And please feel free to let me know how you did on the AP Euro exam when you find your scores out this summer, or just your feelings after you take it. So until next time, season 2. My name's Paul Sargent, and this is AP Euro Bit by Bit. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck on the AP exam. Take care.
All right, so
What happened?
I'm going to stop sharing there. Hopefully I didn't lose too many people there. There we go. And my daughter's decided to join us, so say hi.
Hi.
She's gonna grow up and take AP Euro someday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, we can get back into the questions here. Sorry I had to go away for a second, but we're getting close to bedtime, you know. So anyway, let's hop back in.
Bye.
Good night, sweetheart. Love you. All right, so I got something from Hannah that said my friend Carol would like a shout out. Hey, Carol, and would like to know what important events happened in the mid 1800s. Well, you had a bunch of uprisings throughout Europe. You have the development of industry. You have yeah, well, depends on what you say with mid, but unification movements in Italy and Germany. The creation of dual monarchy would come later, but certainly Austria is dealing with nationalities, and yeah, there's other things going on like that. Let's see. Yeah, thank you for that. My goodness, you guys are just so nice to me. This is absolutely amazing. Let's see. Here's one that we haven't done so far. The main points of the Haitian Revolution. Why this was significant. Okay, so the Haitian Revolution it was mainly run by a guy named Toussaint Louverture. It was it was during the Napoleonic era, and it was a successful uprising. It was the first successful uprising of slaves in the world, really, at that time, and created independence at a time where Napoleon was really kind of busy doing other stuff. It also had significance because of the Haitian Revolution. He ended up selling the Louisiana Purchase to the United States. So we got a lot of land thanks to Haiti. So that's kind of cool. Let's see, brief Russian history. Lots of people want a brief Russian history. Ivan's Peter's modernization. Okay, here's Russian history. Okay, I forget the names and all of that. I'm going to overgeneralize, and if you're Russian, I'm so sorry. Russian history is simply this. There's a constant theme that the Russians feel like they're behind the rest of Western Europe. They don't want to be Asian, at least the people who are running it. They want to be European. So they try and be as sophisticated and as European as possible. They have intermittent problems with their people as they extend into being the largest country on Earth. The amount of territory is astounding, and they control it through violence and secret police and stuff like that. Every now and then you have rulers who come along and they try and pull back from those things. They try and give more freedoms to people, especially trying to help out those who are at the lower end of the social ladder. They always run into problems with the aristocracy who doesn't want them to do that. And then when they do give freedoms, something bad happens and they take all the freedoms away. And then they use violence to get rid of the people who were in their way. And that is basically Russian history. And then they work on modernizing and trying to catch up with Europe again. And that is a recurring theme all throughout Russian history. That one I could do. Can you explain the 19th and 20th centuries ideologies and people that go with, like social Darwinism, Marxism, and utopian socialism? Okay, so again, I have videos on all of these, but social Darwinism is sort of like a bastardization, I guess, of Darwin's ideas. Darwin's ideas of survival of the fittest, and of adapting to your environment, and all of that, and those things through the evolutionary process are taken to like applied to human societies, to say that there are some human societies which have more fully evolved and are more developed than others, and it is part of the natural way of things that some societies can take over less powerful societies because they are more evolved and more able to adapt to their surroundings, and therefore Survival of the fittest, they can totally do it. Marxism, I've covered. Utopian socialism is like the early socialist movements. It's kind of like if you've studied Thomas More's Utopia, it's an attempt to set up a utopia. Utopian socialists envision a society in which everyone works together happily for the good of the whole. The only way that they're even remotely successful at this is when they set up small communities and people agree to go and be a part of them. And even those are questionably successful. And generally, like, they last for a little while with the original people, and then like the next generation just is like, no thanks, I'm good. So they're called utopian socialists by later socialists because it's like, yeah, you totally just didn't get it because you didn't understand human nature. And so those are those three things. What factors led to an increased consumerism and leisure activities in Europe? Factors. Second Industrial Revolution. There's more stuff being made, so you have more stuff to buy. The efforts of unions to improve pay is I better click on this so it doesn't disappear. Increasing pay gives people more disposable income. And when unions are able to get like fewer work hours agreed upon, then people have more time for leisure activities, and they have the money to spend on leisure activities, and so you have an increase in all of this. In other words, the factories are producing things and they need to sell them. They have to have a market, so they make them so that people can buy them. Products become cheaper, more available, more standardized. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, if you wanted clothes, clothes were tailored to your exact body proportions. That costs money. You can do that today. You can go out and get a perfectly tailored suit for you that's handmade for you. It's going to cost you a lot more than going out and picking one off the rack. You can get a pair of shoes made for you. It's going to cost you a lot of money. You just go in there. Maybe you're not quite an 11 or 11 and a half. You said 11 and a quarter. Standard sizes. So anyway, those are the big things. It's just an increase in the amount of money that's available for these things and the amount of time that's available for these things. Could you go over Emmeline Pankhurst and Mary Wollstonecraft? Okay, both feminists. Mary Wollstonecraft is sort of the first. She sort of begins the feminist movement, talks about equality during the Enlightenment, that women should have a place in society, an equal place in society. It doesn't really take hold a whole lot. Emily Pankhurst is more like in your face, we need like equal rights. And the Pankhursts go to extremes with hunger strikes and things like that in order to get their message across. So this is early 20th century feminism, and leads, one of the factors that leads to women getting the vote in places like Britain after World War I. All right, let's see what else we got over here. Let's see. Could you explain the significance and major events of the interwar period? There are a lot of those, honestly. The interwar period, let's just say there's a few major themes that you should understand. Number one, the effects of the Treaty of Versailles. That including the collapse of the German economy and the the troubles of the Weimar Republic. You need to understand the my mind's going blank here. You need to understand the effect of the Great Depression and how it led to extreme situations, which called for extreme solutions and ended in the rise of extreme governments in Spain and in Italy and in Germany and in Russia, and the let's see, what else should you know from the interwar period? Oh, and then there's this ongoing sort of like attempt to try and maintain the peace. No one wants another big European war. And so they try and maintain peace by trying to limit like arms and trying to limit navies. They agree that war is just not a good way to solve problems, so they just denounce war for a while. And then there's the League of Nations, which is meant to be a place where people can talk out their problems, but is flawed because, you know, there's a lot of countries that aren't part of it because they choose not to be, like the United States, you know. So those would be sort of the big issues of the interwar period, I think. Major events: Great Depression, rise of dictatorships. I think those are pretty much the big things. Let's see, what else do we have? English Civil War, already done. Tips and test strategies, yes. Napoleonic Wars, honestly, you don't need to know a whole lot about the Napoleonic Wars, except for the fact that they do set the stage for German unification, because they sort of finally totally get rid of the remnants of the Holy Roman Empire, and they I don't know what just happened. They totally get rid of the remnants of the Holy Roman Empire. They establish the Confederation of the Rhine. It pulls together a lot of people against France, and it shows the danger of one country getting too powerful, and establishes this need for a balance of power where stronger countries will, sort of like stop one country from becoming too strong. Just let me read from the concept outline here. You should be able to explain how the French Revolution and the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars shifted the European balance of power and encouraged the creation of a new diplomatic framework where people are going to talk out problems, work together a little bit. They're going to have more contact with one another. There is definitely Napoleonic Wars. Oh, creates nationalism. Yeah, that you need to understand as well, is that as the French start taking over more and more territories, it creates a nationalist sentiment in the territories they take over, because like these are now invading armies, and so nationalism grows as a result of this throughout Europe. Okay. Let's see what we got. Can you go over Otto von Bismarck and German unification? I've done that, but you know, I've already gone over this. If you want to watch my video on German unification, it definitely gives you the main points here. It consists of 3 wars, all engineered by Otto von Bismarck through a series of diplomatic moves, and ends with Germany being unified and victorious and quickly rising to be one of the most powerful nations in Europe, if not the most powerful nation in Europe. They're going to try and prove that in 1914. Okay. Major theme question: overall changes for women with the biggest events or turning points. I think the woman thing is a really good question, and it's one that's overlooked. I think if you understand, the women's movement has very few like bam moments. It's a gradual improvement of the status of women from the beginning of the course all the way through the modern day. It's an attempt by women to gain political and economic equality with men, social equality with men, it has been largely successful, although not completely successful to this point. Some big moments, events, gaining suffrage in countries after World War I is a major event. The feminist movement of the 1960s and 70s, even though it got some more equality laws passed, that's important. But understand that even today, let's not forget that when women start coming to power as leaders of countries, that is a major move. We haven't done that yet in this country. Oh, well, not yet. Prediction. Anyway, when Margaret Thatcher becomes Prime Minister of England, that's big. Angela Merkel is the Chancellor of Germany now. That's big. But still there's the question of gender equality, especially when it comes to equality for pay. And these are the questions which still are there. The biggest thing that is working against women throughout the entirety of European history is the prevailing attitudes of men that women simply are not equal, and are not capable of doing things that men are capable of doing. Elizabeth I dealt with this. So it's really there's a lot of problems, but very few real turning points, I would say. Let's see. We got some more recent things here. What did other countries do to compete with? Oh, here we haven't talked about this. What did other countries do to compete with Portuguese trade and exploration during the 15th and 16th centuries? Well, depended on who it was. The Portuguese were obviously the first ones to go out and explore, and discover in the Age of Discovery, largely set up because of Henry the Navigator. There were they established trading posts and really got into the spice trade. What other countries did is Spain went like the opposite way and conquered most of the New World, the Americas. And when they decided to draw the line, the Treaty of Tordesillas, it's comical if you look at it from a North and South America perspective, because Portugal gets like part of Brazil and modern day Brazil, and Spain got like the rest of the continent. But Portugal got all of the African outposts and all of the spice trades. Of course, then the British started, messing with that trade a little bit. The Dutch started messing with that trade a little bit, and eventually Portugal has nothing. Actually, they don't hold on to it for all that long, really. So that's what they do to compete. They simply just take them over by force, and it's fort by fort all the way through to take it over. So that by the end of the 16th century, like they're just not they're not part of this at all. Let's see, Adam Storm. How helpful would it be to watch all of your bit-by-bit videos tonight? Adam, I tell you what, I would love to tell you that this is like the best study strategy in the world. However, it's not. I don't exactly know how long it would take to watch all those videos, but I've got 48 bit-by-bit videos, and then there's another set of videos that I made last year, which is probably 20 of those. Yeah, I don't think you could pull it off. I would, if you're going to go through and watch some of those, I would go through and selectively watch them. Look and see what it is that you don't know a lot about, and watch those. But I'd love to think that I was the most entertaining guy in the world, but you hit a breaking point with me. You really do. You're going to be like, you got to stop listening to this guy. Seriously. Differences between the new monarchies during the 15th and 16th centuries and the absolute monarchies, 17th and 18th century. Okay, new monarchies are basically establishing the nation state. They're pulling together regions, they're pulling together city-states, they're pulling together areas, and they're bringing them under the control of a centralized monarchy. All right, that's their big thing. They're using the church to do this, and it gives them the ability to do things like exploration that they weren't able to do when it's a bunch of nobles running around just sort of doing their own thing. The absolute monarchies are able to then build on what the new monarchies created and say, not only are we a nation state, but I am the absolute ruler of that nation state, and I can make us great by taking over trade. I can make us great by building great buildings. I can have an awesome army that can compete, on the battlefield. So it's absolute control. New monarchies are not able to get that kind of control, but they are able to unify the countries, and they are able to pacify the nobility enough to be able to gain control in the monarchy, because the nobility really fights against it. By the time the absolute monarchs come around, that's pretty much been taken care of. And then guys like Louis XIV, like, they really take care of it. They just shut the nobles down. Absolutely, completely. Let's see, the Decembrist Revolt. I don't know if we need to know about the Decembrist Revolt or not. Might as well go back to the old concept outline here, Decembrist Revolt, and see if there is anything that you need to know about this. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, you really don't need to know anything about it, other than the fact that it is just sort of an attempt to revolt against a repressive czarist regime in Russia. I mean, literally, here's what it says. You need to understand that in the first half of the 19th century, revolutionaries attempted to destroy the status quo. That's what you need to know. An example of them doing that is the Decembrist Revolt. So, do you need to know a lot about it? No. Attempted to destroy the status quo, and you can just, like, no, I don't think you need to know any details about that. Analyzing art is always a good question there. I don't think you're going to need to know it. You're not going to need to analyze art like you would in like an art history class, where you would talk about like medium, like what is being painted on and what kind of paints are being used and that sort of thing. I think art would be more periodized so that it would correspond with an historical period. And there would be questions which would ask about how it relates to the historical period. So Renaissance art and humanism, for example, the idea of revival of learning of the ancient world, and then using that learning and understanding in the art that was created at the time. Impressionism as a reaction against the development of the camera, because now, you can just take pictures of stuff. So all of a sudden now it's not so much about depicting reality, but depicting like what the artists see. Sorry, my back is starting to kill me now in this chair. So the art thing, I think, is going to be a little bit more periodized than describe the artistic elements of this piece of art. So I wouldn't overstress on the art stuff. Know some basics about each period, and you should be pretty good. Can you explain Chartism is a big question. Chartism is simply the people of England are asking for some basic franchise and some rights. And while it is initially put down, the British government ends up, kind of giving it to them because they, they realize that that's the way to avoid major revolts is if you do gradual reform. That's the thing you really got to understand. You can almost say Britain. I don't want to say something that I can't say because I want to make sure I can say this. Yeah, okay, so you can probably just look and say, if you want to qualify Britain and just kind of like put it in your mind, Britain is about gradual change. There are problems with it at times. There are times where gradual change isn't happening and it can't happen and people fight against it, but largely gradual change. And because of the gradual change, Britain avoids a lot of the turmoil that lots of the countries that don't want to give in to any change experience from, let's go, why not? Let's go 1700 to like today, So it's pretty stable for pretty much the whole time. And it's little movements like Chartism and movements for reform and things like that the people are sort of putting forth. I'm sorry, words are starting to get harder for me. It's getting late. And chart, but understand that like Chartism is the people write a charter and they send it to Parliament to say like, hey, we'd like some more rights, which is something that they wouldn't be able to do in other countries because this would be like, whoa, no, you don't, no. Russia? Oh, no. So it's sort of a total British thing. Oh, let's see what else we got here. Let's see, Swede Dodson. Sorry, I'm glad this is helping you. It is a fast pace. I know. Yeah. I'm sorry. I can't tell you how many questions I got here. Mitchell Hudson, the de-Christianization of Europe. Yeah. Explain it. Well, it's gradual. It's gradual. It starts. When would it start? Probably during the scientific revolution is where I'd put a beginning to it, because science puts the church in a position where it has to defend things that are largely indefensible. There's also the Reformation, which causes differences between what true Christianity really is, and so people start going like, well, I can't figure that out. The de-Christianization of Europe starts. I just got a quote. I just got I'm sorry. I'm losing, but I really got a kick out of this. Nina just sent a post that said, I've been listening to B. Sargent for almost 3 hours now. Like, that sounds like torture. I'm sorry. But I mean, more power to you. I hope this is helping, but man, if I was your age, I'd be bored to tears right now. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, de-Christianization. And so then it largely it just progresses, and it just gets kind of worse and worse. The religious intolerance, which is brought up during the Enlightenment, makes it worse. The French Revolution tries to do away with religion. And while religion persists, please don't think that like people don't go to church in Europe, but it becomes more and more and more and more and more and more secular. And it becomes more secular as people whether they be normal people or whether they be philosophers, start asking the question of how could God allow some of these things to happen that are happening? So that now Europe has one of the lowest, uh, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like church attendance rates in the world, because they are extremely secular and they don't spend a lot of time going to church. In fact, they kind of look at Americans who are, very religious when compared, especially to Europeans. They kind of just don't understand that. So that's a good question. It's very gradual. It's one of those things that, it's kind of hard to track, and there's no real like bam, bam, but something like that. Here's Oh, you guys love turning things around on me, don't you? Is there any major question which you feel we're not asking? I don't know that I could tell you what we've talked about at this point. Is there anything that we haven't covered? We really haven't talked a lot about trade, especially during the age of exploration. So there's a couple of things that I think should be addressed. Triangular trade you're going to need to know about. This is the trade that is between Europe, Africa, and the New World. Generally speaking, Europe is producing goods, finished goods. Finished goods being like you take some raw materials and you turn them into something. So, well, how about we switch that around? Let's start with Europe. Start with the New World. Raw materials are coming out of there. So you're getting wood, you're getting furs, you're getting produce, you're getting cotton, you're getting sugar cane, all that. That's being shipped to Europe. Europe is then manufacturing goods out of that. So like, let's say you ship wood from the New World, and then in Europe, that wood is then with artisans turned into fine furniture, right? Or how about weapons? That fine furniture and weapons, and sugar can be turned into rum. You bring that down to Africa, you trade that for slaves. Because the African kingdoms on the coast like having these new goods. They have lots of available people in the interior that can't defend themselves with the well-armed tribes on the coast. So they go in and they take people from those interior tribes, they bring them to the coast, they sell them into slavery, they get the goods that they're looking for, which not only make them feel better, but also make them more capable of getting more potential slaves. Slaves are then taken to the New World, where they are put to work creating raw materials, which will go. And so you got the triangular trade. There's also what's called the Columbian Exchange, which is huge because it totally changes the lives of like everyone in the world, pretty much. Europe sends a lot of new products to the New World: horses, pigs, cows. I mean, the biggest oxen, the biggest draft animal, the animal that could pull and do the most work and be tamed in the New World, in like the Americas, was the llama. You don't get a lot of places if you're going on llama power. But then it's also the exchange of like wheat comes over and rice comes over. On the other side, then like the potato is brought to Europe, the tomato, the sugar on a large scale. There's all this exchange of goods, and it makes things possible, and it makes life changes for everybody. They can support more people with more different products. I mean, what would the Irish have been without the potato? It sustained them for a long time. What would Italian food be without tomatoes? It'd be noodles and cheese, and likewise, there's also the exchange of disease, so that most notably smallpox, but other diseases are brought from the old world to the new world, and are devastating. Absolutely wipe out populations, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, even maybe by some historians' estimations. We don't really know exact numbers. We being Europeans, get syphilis from the New World, which is, not pleasant, I don't think, but certainly it's not smallpox. So yeah, I think that's it. There's probably, I'm sure there are other things that we're not asking, but I can't think of them right now. Let's see, what else do we have? Old imperialism and new imperialism. So I talked about old imperialism just now, the colonialism. You're going in, Spanish and Portuguese basically going in. Kind Hearts, you are just, I love you. I got to be honest with you. You're so nice to me. This is fantastic. So yeah, old imperialism, it's basically run by the Spanish and the Portuguese. There's a lot of settling colonies, intermarriage. There's a lot of Spaniards and Portuguese who go and live in these new colonies and become the colonials. And then, later on, Dutch, French, British, they do the same thing in different ways. But, they're like colonizing. It's such a loaded word. But yeah, they're going over and they're living there and they're establishing societies there. New imperialism was in the late 19th and early 20th centuries and lasting until the mid 20th century, maybe even later in some places. And it's less about establishing permanent colonies that people can, that Europeans will, develop and live in. And it's more about exploiting the people of Africa and Asia for raw materials, goods, and labor. That's the big difference. Yeah, I would say those are the two big differences there. Yeah. Positivism. Someone asked about, or you guys have been sort of pushing up positivism. I almost don't want to say that it's on here and it'll be on the test. So I think positistic. If I spelled the word right, maybe that would help things just a little bit. Positivism. Yeah, okay. So you do have to know this. Yeah, it's just, so all you need to know about positivism. So we're talking about the like the late 19th century here. Well, midish late, with positivism. It's this belief that science is the only way to get to the answers. Rely on science. Don't rely on anything else. That's basically it. That's it. So yeah, that's all you got to know. The Kellogg-Briand Pact. I don't know that they really have any serial questions here. Kellogg-Briand Pact. This was the one where Count Chocula. Yeah, I don't know if Count Chocula is Kellogg's. No, it's not here. You don't need to know it. You can throw it in as one of the ways that they tried to like prevent war between World War I and World War II, but no, you don't need to. It's not going to be tested. Okay. I'm going to jump over here for a little bit, just because it's back and forth. And we'll get to some more recent things. I'm sure some of the people who asked questions 4 hours ago, have it been 4 hours? 3 hours ago, or I have left. Although I've still got 400, there are 450 of you crazy people who are still on. You guys are insane. Seriously. This is wow. What was the effect of enlightenment on women? There really wasn't one. I mean, Wollstonecraft came out and said that women should have equality, and every other Enlightenment philosopher kind of said, yeah, no. So no. Let's see. Bree, you liked my lasagna comment. Seriously, great, best food in the world, lasagna. You can't beat it. It's just like the layers, the cheese, love it. Let's see, what else do we have? Nina, tell you what, you asked a couple of questions 3 hours ago. You've been waiting, so now you start saying nice things. Okay, all right, I see how it is. Now that's cool. I appreciate it. I'm just still surprised that people are here for 3 hours, to be honest with you. There are people who are cramming at the YouTube channel. Yes. Neoclassicism. Okay. Evan Vinson, neoclassicism. I believe it actually is on one of the art movements that you're going to need to be able to talk about, although it's a relatively brief one. Yeah, it is in here. And it's simply it's one of the art movements that you can use as an example. Okay. But basically neoclassicism roughly runs alongside romanticism. But it really emphasizes, like, classicism is sort of the old world, like Greek and Rome, and neoclassicism really glorifies Greece and Rome. So it's a lot of, like, very, like, guys wearing togas, and stuff like that. There's also neoclassical architecture, which, again, it's a lot like the classical architecture of Greece and Rome. So you get a lot of, like, pillars and porticos and stuff like that. So if you think about what would be a good example of a neoclassical building, boy, half of the buildings in Virginia are neoclassical. Oh, you're cracking me up here. This is really funny. Yeah, anything with, like, pillars and things like that is neoclassical. So it's sort of this revival of, like, let's make it all look like not serene. That's not the word I'm looking for. Like stoic and nouns. Sometimes they just don't. They're not there sometimes. Okay, so picture, like, if you've ever been to Washington D.C., picture basically any white building in Washington D.C. That's neoclassical. Yeah, any of them, neoclassical. Yeah, pillars, right? Its impact is basically an architectural impact. The impact on art is minimal at best, I think, and it's kind of downplayed. I mean, I would spend more time on the art movements that I discussed earlier, but thanks for that. Do we need to know who Savonarola is? I seriously doubt it, because his overthrow of the Medici and then his eventual, like, death is not is like a minor little glitch. Nope, don't need to know it. Don't need to know it. How can you memorize all of European history? You can't. You know that. You can't do that. You absolutely shouldn't try to know everything, because you can't. Mitchell Hudson, Mitchell Hooden, sorry. By the way, if I'm butchering your names, I really apologize because I'm doing my best here. But, you know, sorry. Give me a sec. Could you explain commercialization of agriculture and trade unions? Commercialization of agriculture is really trying to apply technology to agriculture. So you're going to have sort of machines running on farms. It's far more efficient. You can, I mean, you know, like people don't farm without machines except for, you know, some groups. Like here in Pennsylvania, the Amish, they don't farm with machines, but everyone else they farm with machines, and so yeah, it's very commercial, run by companies largely, you know, consolidation and stuff like that. Um, Trade unions, they arise in the late 19th century. They fight for workers' rights. They fight for better conditions, shorter hours, more pay, those sorts of things. And they find some success along the way in that. They make big changes. And they make the lives of workers better. You could generally say, and I think this is a big generalization, but I think it's an important one to understand. The standard of living for most Europeans is going to be on a pretty continual upswing throughout all of this course. Over the last 565 years now, 66, that the course covers, right? Yeah, just like the lives of everybody gets better. And even if you're the richest of the rich, like when you're in the Middle Ages, you don't have indoor plumbing. You don't even want to know the story. You don't even want to, it's not pretty. But, you know, indoor plumbing. And, you know, it's kind of nice that you can learn while you're sitting at home watching a video live. You know, that's pretty cool. It's kind of cool that I can lose my voice trying to teach all of you guys. I'm just joking, by the way. About what percentage of the exam do I need to get correct to score a 4? Will be lower since this year, since this is the first year of the new exam. This is a very good question and one that I don't know the answer to. I used to say that generally like 65 to 68% was kind of your cutoff. If you got above that, you would get a 4. It may be lower because this is the first year of the exam. It may be higher. I mean, I don't know. And no one knows. What they do is when everyone takes the exam, then the College Board takes a random sample of them and they score them. And then they try to figure out kind of how well people performed on that exam. And then they do what's called a norming process. And I don't know a whole lot about the details of it, but basically what they try and do is they try and set it so that like the pass percentage remains roughly the same year to year. And that means if for some reason easier questions make it onto an exam and scores are higher, like overall, like the number you get right are higher, then they'll norm it down or norm it up, I guess, to make it harder to get those. But the same percentage of kids roughly are getting the same scores. Does that make any sense? So, I mean, it really depends on how you guys go and do. Now, don't think that you're going to like start the internet campaign to tank the Euro exam. Let's all just, you know, do horribly on it, because I guarantee you with this group of people, if there are still 500 people who are still on here 3 hours later, they're not going to go in tomorrow and tank the exam just to see if it'll work, right? Please don't do that. I didn't give you that idea. Anyway, I don't know. Okay, let's see. Let's jump over here for a minute because I don't want to talk about Prussia and the Fredericks, because honestly, I get confused with the Fredericks and Prussia. I really do, because there's too many of them, you know. let's see, some of the art periods and their characteristics. All right, so Dylan Brown asks about art periods and characteristics. And I'm going to have to punt on this one because I don't think that I would either under-explain them so that it makes no sense whatsoever, or I would over-explain them and we'd be sitting here for 20 minutes on Dylan's question. Dylan, I'm going to screen share with you here, boy. And here's what here's what I would do. If you go to my YouTube page, I have videos. Again, they're short and they don't, they're not going in totally into anything, not totally into everything. But the Renaissance, I would definitely watch. Knowing a little bit about Michelangelo as an example of that is good because he's a good example. Naturalism is one that they ask about. Let's see, what else do I have? Come on, I know I did more art than this. Maybe I didn't do much. Oh my goodness, maybe I didn't do much art. Maybe I have to go to my other playlist. There's another playlist that I have, which is AP European History. And these are a little bit older, and I was a little bit fatter. Okay, I was a lot fatter, seriously. Don't watch these unless you really want to just laugh at me. Impressionism is here. 19th century realism. The interwar period in Europe in the 1920s has art stuff in it. So I would look at those and you'll get a fairly good idea of some of the major art periods and what they were. Beyond that, search on YouTube would be a good way to do it, because art's one of those things, like, you can look at it in the book, but I've never seen a textbook that does a good job explaining art, because they kind of just give it a paragraph or two and then they show you a few pictures and you go like, Best way to learn art, I know this isn't going to help you for tomorrow, but best way to learn art, go to an art gallery, walk around, go into the Renaissance room and look at all of them, and then read the little stuff. They usually have like information, but that's not going to help you. There's no art museum open right now, unless you're in Hawaii. Then it's only 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So there might be art museums open. All right. Let's see, existentialism and Nietzsche. Okay, so they're kind of two different things. Existentialism is the idea, I think I've done existentialism already, but basically it's the idea that there is no higher power, there is no God, there is no nothing, that there's no final judgment. You do what you want to, and like, nothing exists. We are an accident. You're an accident. I'm an accident. That's it. Nietzsche was big. He believed that there were there's a lot of stuff that he wrote about, but he kind of believed that humanity would have a hard time ruling itself. He believed that there were people who were more fit to run societies and that people should give them whatever power they needed to make societies better. He called these the supermen. He is largely, credited, I guess, with giving something for Hitler to misinterpret. So if you want to get a good laugh, look on YouTube, search for, what's his name, Ricky Gervais and Nietzsche. And he does this, it's short, it's like 5 minutes, but it is hilarious. Him talking about Nietzsche and Hitler. It's just a great piece. And I like showing it to my students. A lot of people have questions about the writing portions on the exam. And of course, yes, What happens if we can't remember? What would you suggest to do? Your best. Your best. I honestly can't believe that there would be a writing portion that you just don't know anything about. Everyone worries about this. Sometimes there are things, and I do this too. I'll look at released like essay questions when you guys finish this test. They're going to release the written portion. I think the whole thing within a couple of days. And I'm going to look at it and I'm going to go, oh, I don't know how you did. And then you start thinking, and you go, wait a minute, no, I got something here. There are 3 writing portions. The short answer question, you got 4 questions, each of which are going to have 2 or 3 parts to them. If you don't know a part of, let's say even you don't know one part of all 4, still you've got 2/3 of the points there. So that's really good. The DBQ, you can write a DBQ on a topic that you've never even heard of. And get 6 of the 7 points if you know how to write a DBQ. So watch my video on DBQ. Or if you want more in-depth, and I know I've mentioned his name a lot, but Tom Ritchie, he has a 4-part series on the DBQ. Very, very, very good. The LEQ, you get 2 choices, and it's the same question as 2 time periods. Choose the one where you know something about it and get what points you can. Again, understanding how it's going to be scored will make you feel a lot better, because you can get points without knowing too much if you're a good writer. If you're a bad writer, you're going to have a harder time, you know. Let's see. Could you go over the French Revolution, specifically Robespierre? Well, it's Robespierre, so I'm hoping that's you got auto-corrected on that one. But Robespierre is kind of like the radical of all radicals of the French Revolution. He keeps trying to make it more and more, radical. Goes around, he redoes the calendar, tries to de-Christianize the country, tries to eliminate all of the enemies of the revolution by beheading them. He's constantly calling out people for being traitors and all of that. It backfires. In the Thermidorian reaction, Thermidorian named because it happened in the new French month of Thermidor, which, by the way, means the hot month, so like August. They cut his head off. They say, no, we don't want this anymore. They pull back on the reign of terror, and they say, let's kind of calm things down a little bit. But they're not able to do that very well. Let's see, what else haven't I done? What we've gotten over lately. Revolutions of 1800 I've gone over. Causes of the Reformation. Okay, there's a few. There's a lot of causes of the Reformation, long-term and short-term. How to go about this? All right, long-term is there are problems with the way the Catholic Church is doing things. The Catholic Church having split into 3 during the Great Schism. Yeah, fine. So I know. Yeah, I'm taking the Gatorade slowly. I got my water next. I'm talking too much. That's what it is. This thing's gonna explode on me. Anyway, so you've got sort of the church is involved in practices which are not church-like. You have popes that have children. You have popes that have children with their daughters. So it's their son and their grandson at the same time. You have popes who become popes because their dad was pope. You have corruption. You have illiterate priests. I mean, all of these sort of like long-term causes of the whole thing. The questioning of like Erasmus's questioning of the Vulgate Bible and its translation, whether it's correct or not, is part of that. But it all kind of comes to a head when the sale of indulgences in Germany, the Holy Roman Empire, is called out by Luther, and he nails the 95 Theses to the church door. And because like no one's really in a good place to stop him, like, he just starts writing stuff, and he just goes crazy. Like, he writes all the time, and you got to read this stuff. I mean, it's a fun read, actually. But yeah, so those would be the causes of the Reformation. It's good we haven't done that one yet, so that's probably good here. Let's see. Art movements, Italian unification. Mitchell's back again. Have we gone over the importance of Machiavelli's The Prince in defining leaders throughout European history? No. But I can sum that one up pretty quickly. A lot of them like him. That's it. If you're a ruler who likes power, Machiavelli is the way. Yeah, I mean, you know, Machiavelli is going to be sort of your, not Bible, but it's going to be your like blueprint, you know. And what Machiavelli says is that, and we all get stuck on the whole like it's better to be feared than to be loved. But what he really tries to say is he tries to say that people are fickle. People are going to sway with the times. And if times are good, they're going to be happy. And if they're happy, you got nothing to worry about, right? Everything's great. However, there are going to be bad times. And when bad times come along, they're not going to be happy. And when they're not happy, that's when you got a problem. Now, he does say that it is best if you have, like, you can't overreact to situations as a ruler and totally take out people. Sorry. So you can't just totally take out people and like react violently against every single thing that happens, because that's not going to win over the people at all. But when you, my goodness, I've never gotten, I think I've gotten more tweets today than I have in my entire life. Where was I? Oh yeah. So you can't just come down on them, because that's not going to solve anything. So you have to deal with them in a measured way. But he says an ideal leader is loved by his people, but his people also fear him. He says, but that's not always possible to, like, you can't always have that. So if you have a choice, if you're going to be feared or if you're going to be loved, then it's better to be feared. And the reason is this: if your people love you, then it's great when times are good. When times are bad, they're going to be nasty to you, and they're not going to mind. Hey, from me to you, I'll tell you, I've been teaching for a while. I have had students that just love my teaching. They love me. Then they get a bad grade on the test, and all of a sudden, like, you know, I'm the devil incarnate. It's my fault. But I then don't go Machiavellian, because I just can't. I'm not a Machiavellian kind of guy. But he does say, for a good ruler, like, if the people fear you, then they won't rise up against you and take advantage of you, because they'd be too scared to do it. So ideally, you want both, but if you have to choose, better to be feared than loved. Apply that to almost any ruler who's not democratically elected, and you're going to do pretty well. You can draw a line. So good question on that one. Just wanted to say thanks for this review. You are saving my life, Mark Barrow. I don't believe that that's actually true, but you're welcome. I tell you, people don't stick around for 3.5 hours if this is like the only thing they, if you're not ready, because you wouldn't be able to do it. Oh, Lena, God bless you for doing this. Oh, you guys are so nice. Seriously, you're gonna make me cry here pretty soon. Oh no, there's the Fredericks in Prussia again. Okay, all right. I'm just gonna look them up, okay? Frederick, because there's the Great Elector and Frederick the First and Frederick the, yeah, I get confused. And here they are. All right. Oh, okay. All right. So look, the Fredericks are only used as examples. Right? They're used they are used as examples in this context. After the Treaty of Westphalia and the real breakup of the Holy Roman Empire, you have the rise of new powers in Eastern Europe. The Habsburgs gain a greater hold on Austria, where they had a looser hold on all of the Holy Roman Empire. You have the Hohenzollerns, which is the Fredericks, coming up in Prussia. And Prussia gains status as a pretty major country. You know, not like they will be when they become Germany, but they certainly are, like, they're up there with the elite of Europe. And then the Romanovs in Russia. So they really sort of consolidate power under the Hohenzollern dynasty, largely through their use of the military. And Prussia becomes known as being a militaristically based society. The military is the basis of all of the power, because they have a strong nobility. And if they give the nobility, officer jobs in the army, then the nobility doesn't rise up against them. So, yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know about them. Whew, I'm glad I'm done with that one. Can you explain the diet of worms? Yes. Okay, so in the diet of worms, or verms as it's known, because the Germans pronounce their W's as V's, the diet of worms. So the idea was that there are imperial diets, and this is like when the emperor says, like, everyone's eating grapefruit all the time because we need to slim down. No, I'm kidding. See, late night jokes get really bad. Although that grapefruit joke was pretty appealing. Anyway, diet of worms. So you got this problem with Luther. Luther's problem is going on and on and on and on. They can't have it anymore. So Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, is holding a diet. So this is where the princes of the Holy Roman Empire come together to, talk about what's going on and to meet and all of that. They call him in. They tell him he has to recant his beliefs. He says no, he can't do it. They proclaim him a heretic. In the Edict of Worms, they declare him an outcast and a criminal, and they say he needs to be captured and killed. He is smuggled out of Worms and hidden away in a castle, Marburg Castle, I believe, off the top of my head, where he, being Luther and like just needing something to do, he does what anyone would do if they're just hanging out in the castle for a while. He translates the Bible from Latin into German, the New Testament, which is like, why not? Because it's only just a few hundred pages. Along the way, he invents the German language, or at least makes his version of German the standardized German language. So that is the diet of verbs. Is there something we should know about Italian city-states and their economies? Italian city-states, certainly they are unique in Renaissance Europe because there is no other place around that has thriving city-states like exist in Italy. Florence, Venice, Rome, Milan. There's probably some others, but those are like the big ones. So they develop, like, because they're relatively close, they develop competition with art. Oh, hello, Italian Renaissance art. Competition with trade. The Venetians and the Genoese are huge traders, very, very wealthy based on this. The Florentines get very wealthy on the banking industry of the Medicis. But because they're so divided and because they're so self-sufficient in a way, unification efforts never really go anywhere. And then when they start fighting with one another, because they establish modern diplomacy, and then it breaks down, and then when they start fighting against one another, they realize that they can't hold a war because they don't have the resources. So they turn to other big consolidated countries, nation states, who consolidated under the new monarchies. And yeah, big mistake, because those nation states just come in, they just basically take over. Goodbye, Italy, or as an idea. So yeah, that's certainly it. It's the beginning of banking. It's there's big time trade coming out of there, wealth, art, humanism. It all starts there, and then Italy kind of fades. If you notice the narrative, like, you talk about Italy when we're doing the Renaissance at the beginning of the school year, and then you probably didn't really mention Italy again until I'm trying to run through things here. Italian unification, probably. There's probably very little mention of Italy between that entire time, and that's the reason, because they were just occupied by Austria and France the whole time. Okay, I'm getting jumped here on all sides. Nina's brain hurts, finally. But watch 4 videos of yours. Nina, when you're done here, you're going to watch 4 more videos of mine. This is absolutely just crazy. Can you go over the big names you are certain to see and what they did? Josue Gonzalez. Yeah, long. That would take me forever. Yeah, I don't even know that I have the list of big names. I mean, I have the concept outline, but I can't go through here and just go like name by name by name. We get halfway through the Renaissance and stuff like that. Nathan Jensen has a good point, a good question. And I would also direct you, Nathan, and for the rest of you, for this, to my question on, or to my video on the DBQ, the thesis excellent point. All right. So you get a point for, of the 7-point scale. 1 point is for having a thesis. Like, don't restate the question, okay? Well, you should know that by now. Don't sit there and say, don't restate the question. And don't do some lame thesis statement, which is like, there are various causes for the French Revolution. Well, yeah, obviously there are. Like, duh. But the thesis excellent means that you have a very good thesis which addresses all parts of the prompt and without restating it. And then you continue to support that throughout your essay with evidence. That's how you get the thesis excellent point. And so, like, it's not just that you kind of throw something out there at the beginning and you don't go back to it, but you're constantly referring back to it. It's the basis of a good argument. that I'm going to put forth what I believe is true, and then I'm going to support it with evidence, and I'm going to constantly tell you why that evidence leads back to the point that I'm right. Eventually, if I do my job right, then you're going to believe me because you can't not believe me. And you've read things, I'm sure, in all kinds of classes and, in all kinds of places in your life where that's the case. You ever been convinced of something you didn't think you could be convinced of just because someone had so many facts and you're like, okay, fine, I get it, yeah. Salesman, buy this phone. Here are all the great things about it. Seriously, they're the best salesman in the world. I'm the worst salesman in the world. But I could tell you this, the iPhone, you know why? It works. It always works. It never fails. Why would you buy anything else? Seriously. Now everyone's going to go off. This question is going to stop being about European history and about how great Android phones are. Yeah, my wife has an Android phone. It doesn't work. Another good question, and this is one that I think, cover in my DBQ video. How should we cite documents in the DBQ? Bad way to do it. Document 1 says blah, blah. Don't do it that way, okay? Make sure the readers want you to see, they want to understand that you understand. They want to know that you understand that documents have to be judged based on who wrote them and why they were written and when they were written and all of these sorts of things. So if you have a document which was written by Otto von Bismarck, then you would say something along the lines of, Bismarck felt that, action was required, not words, in order to complete the unification of Germany. And then I always tell myself, now you don't have to do this, okay? But really, it would be a travesty, and you would never know because you don't get this information back. It would be a real tragedy if you use a document and then the reader who's reading it misses the fact that you used the document. So in parentheses, right after that, you just put Doc 1. And that's their indication of hey, just used it. So that's a good way to jump at it. I guess capital letters work. Yeah, it's funny. Just did. Go over the important treaties. I've already done that. The important treaties that I would know are the Treaty of Versailles, the Maastricht Treaty, the Treaty of Westphalia, the Congress of Vienna, the Peace of Augsburg. That's probably about it. I'm sure there might be one or two that I missed, but yeah, not really. But I've already gone over all of this. Howard Joseph II and Frederick II, enlightened absolutists. So enlightened absolutists were monarchs who wanted and had absolute authority, like absolutists, but they tried to take some of the Enlightenment ideals, like education, freedom of speech, religious toleration, those sorts of things, and implement them. No one really did it well. Joseph II, most people will say, was more successful, but your three enlightened absolutists that most people will cite, Joseph, Frederick, and Catherine the Great of Russia. But in every case, they try to make these reforms. They don't really work all that well, so they kind of pull back on them, and then they go away. So that's how they were enlightened absolutists. Thoughts on time management during the 2 essays? Oh yes, maybe I haven't mentioned this. Wear a watch. Okay, wear a watch because it is absolutely imperative that you know how much time you have. The 90 minutes for the 2 essays. 90 minutes. I have 90 minutes for the 2 essays. Unless you're including the reading period. All right, anyway. How would you do time management? I would say you hedge your bets, you know? If you're good at writing DBQs, if you know how to write a DBQ, if you know how they're scored, spend time on your DBQ and write a good one. Get all 7 points. And then go into the LEQ and write the best one you can with the time left. The readers know that you're under a time crunch. They get it. Try and hold to the time that you're allotted. But you know, I mean, you don't. It's not a hard, steadfast rule. So you do your best. And if you're not that strong on DBQs, you do the best you can, and then you go in and you write a really good LEQ. Most people finish writing long before the essay time is over, believe it or not. I mean, it seems like you wouldn't, but most people in my experience that I've seen finish early for whatever reason. I got to tell you though, that LEQ, you're going to be tired when you get to it. You're going to be exhausted. The last thing you're going to want to do is to start another writing. But you got to power through. And you got to make it and do the best you can. Okay? Cardinal Richelieu's France, simple. It's all about consolidating power it's all about consolidating power under the monarchy, becoming absolutist. And that's what you need to know about Cardinal Richelieu. He's the architect behind the switch in 30 Years' War towards a dynastic war. And he is the architect of absolutism in France. Done. This one I've been missing. It's been kind of hanging out there, but the Council of Trent. All right, the Council of Trent comes up during the French Revolution, during the Reformation. It is the Catholic Church's response to the Reformation, and basically what they say is this. By the way, if I recall, the Council of Trent goes on for a couple of years. Like, it's not like they show up for a weekend and they talk this stuff out. But they basically say a few things. Number one, they say Protestants are wrong and we're right. Doctrinally. In other words, like, the way we interpret the Bible is the correct way. We've been doing this for 1,500 years. We got it right. These people, they don't know what they're talking about. They're heretics. God's going to take care of them. Don't follow them. On the other hand, they do have some good points. And their good points largely have to do with the fact that we've got some people in the church who are doing things which aren't very churchly. And so we're going to put a stop to that. We need priests to be celibate. We need, you're not going to be able to buy church offices anymore, And then they go ahead and they establish another Inquisition, and they establish the Jesuit order to go out and partially carry out the Inquisition, but also partially push education as a way to to strengthen the Catholic faith. So it's largely referred to as the Catholic Reformation or the Counter-Reformation or the Catholic Counter-Reformation. But the Council of Trent, they say, we're right about the idea. Some people have gotten out of control and we need to kind of rein them in. And that's kind of, that's kind of what it is. And it's big. It's big that you understand that. Because they don't give in to the Protestant Reformation. They really don't. I'm about to give in to this, to tiredness here. I'm going to just look for a couple of things that I know that we haven't talked about and that might be on the exam. Okay, seriously, I gotta take this one. Sean, thoughts on writing a joke and then putting a thin line through it so it can't be scored on the essay if you don't know the essay. It's not going to get you any points. It's not going to lose you any points. And the person who's reading it might laugh, which is always a good thing, because they sit there for hours and they read the same essay. Like, not the same essay, but like the same essay question. They read it for like days on end, blow through. I mean, it's a lot of essays. So, reading a joke here and there, it might help. It might help. Still trying to figure out how to get him to see my questions. Jacob, I'm sorry, man. There are so many questions coming in. I can't see everybody's. It's honestly overwhelming. So I'm doing my best. I'm sorry if I haven't gotten your question. I'm looking at what you've written, and I don't even see anything that has to do with the question. But okay, here's someone who says, "Let's go over the Cold War and the 20th century stuff. Our teacher never got to it." Yeah, you know what? And you're our idol. Please don't make me your idol. It's not no. So I've gone over the basics of the Cold War. I mean, it's this fight of East versus West. It's an ideological fight between communism and capitalism, whether an economy should be centrally controlled or controlled by individuals, who should own property. And it's really the fight of two superpowers who are, at least on the surface, evenly matched. And it never actually comes to a war, because they know that a war will mean like destruction of humanity. And so while they threaten war a lot, they back off as soon as they get really close, every time. And that's really what the Cold War is. I mean, Soviet Union clamps down on Eastern Europe. We essentially buy Western Europe, and then we spend the rest of the century, and this is going to sound cynical, but it's late. Both countries spend the rest of the century like running around to places that they probably don't care all that much about, except for the fact that they don't want it to go to the other side. So third world countries get pulled into this, and wars are fought in third world countries to get them to either be communist or capitalist democracy, or and it's not because I think it's not because the country really cares. If the country, it's not really that one of the superpowers cares about the country itself. It's they see that losing one country to the other is a loss in their prestige and all of that. All right, I gotta tell you guys, I am seriously done. I can't keep this going. At this point, what I would say is, it's 10:45 at night. You need to go to bed. You need to get some sleep. You need to be fresh tomorrow. Some of you are going to have to get up and go to school at, same early time you do every year. I have to be at school. I'm going to be at school the same early time I am every day. But some of you are going to be able to sleep in, which is good. But get sleep, because there's nothing at this point which is going to benefit you more than having a clear mind and not being tired when you take this exam. All right? You've studied for, what, 8 months now? It's time to let it go. All right? If you've got videos lined up that you want to watch, I'm really, really, really grateful if you're watching my videos. I've seen my channel explode. It's I can't even explain to you how like how cool it makes, how cool it feels that people are finding this stuff useful, because I honestly just started this on a whim. But watch them tomorrow. Don't watch them tonight. Go to bed, get some sleep, and then go in there tomorrow and do the best you can. And if you feel like it, please let me know if it helped, And that's the best advice I can give you at this point, because you guys have been doing it all year. So there's not that much that you can do right at the end that's going to make that much of a difference. You're going to spend a lot of time studying stuff, and you can be really frustrated if you spend a lot of time and it doesn't get you but maybe one question more on the exam. Okay? So I want to thank all of you for sticking around with me for 4 hours. This has been 4 hours, right? Yeah, just about 4 hours. Thank you. I mean, this is just like, I don't know what to say. You guys have made my day. You've made my year. You've made my month. Thank you. Please do me a favor. Spread the word about my channel. Tell people about it. Send people there. If you know people who are taking the class next year, or if your teacher doesn't know about my channel, let them know. Show them, and that way the videos can help more people. And that's really what they're there for. And I'm going to be making more of them. And just a little hint here, or a little bit of a teaser, if you're taking AP Gov next year, that's going to be my next project, is AP Gov bit by bit. So you'll be able to see me through that process as well. But anyway, I can't thank you enough for coming and spending this time with me. I cannot believe that over 400 of you stayed with me the whole time. So thank you. Have a wonderful night. Go to bed and get up tomorrow and take a look at some stuff that you need to look at. All right? So good night, and please feel free to let me know how you did. And even better than that, don't just send me a comment. Record yourself. Send me a 30-second, 1-minute video telling me how you did on the exam, because that'd be really cool. I would enjoy watching those. All right? And who knows? Some of them might show up if you allow me to. Some of them might show up on my channel in the future. All right? So thanks again. Have a great night. I'm going to go to bed myself because I'm exhausted. So take care. Good luck tomorrow. And if you're able, tune in to Tom Ritchie's breakfast with, I want to give you the correct thing. You know what? I'm just going to retweet his thing about the breakfast hangout. But if you go to tomritchie.net/hangouts, he has the link there. But he does a nice little broadcast the day of the AP exam, which is more review and probably more entertaining than this. So I'm going to shut up now because I'm not going to be able to talk tomorrow. So have a great night. Take care. Thanks for watching.